Chapter 268. To Yang Tian, this woman was troublesome. How could he take her away? Yang Tian began to think. This woman's body still had fluctuations of life. She wasn't a corpse, so he couldn't put her into the storage bracelet. But after taking her away from here, where would he put her? Yang Tian was in a difficult position. He felt that he couldn't leave this woman alone. Yang Tian reached out and carried the woman out of the sarcophagus. This young woman had soft, light blue hair. Her body was soft and boneless, and her skin was extremely smooth. There was also a faintly discernible fragrance on her body. This fragrance was very strange and smelled very good. It made Yang Tian's heart flutter. This was also an instinctive reaction of a man. Although he wasn't a virgin anymore, Yang Tian's face still turned red when he carried this woman. After carrying the woman out of the sarcophagus, he carefully laid her flat on the ground. Pa! Pa! Suddenly, the two pearls in the sarcophagus that were emitting bright light suddenly shattered. Yang Tian looked inside the sarcophagus and felt that it was a pity. If these two beads didn't shatter, they could be used as lighting tools in dark places when he was training in the universe in the future. The two glowing beads shattered, but the strange thing was that the black and white beads on the woman's hand didn't fall off. It was as if they were glued to her hand. Seeing the woman lying on the ground was incomparably beautiful. Her body was faintly discernible under the thin clothes. Yang Tian's mouth was dry, and he forcibly suppressed his instinctive desire. If it were any other man, when faced with this situation, they would probably. After calming down, Yang Tian checked the situation inside the sarcophagus. He found that there was nothing else good inside except for the two glowing beads that had already shattered. This stone room wasn't big. It was about 10 meters in length, width, and height. Apart from this sarcophagus, was there anything else hidden here? Yang Tian began to search the stone room. The little blue dragon, who had turned into a mini Xiaolong, also helped. Unfortunately, the man and the dragon were busy for half a day, but they didn't find anything good. During this process, Yang Tian moved the heavy sarcophagus away, even inspecting the base of the sarcophagus. Yang Tian, who didn't gain anything, put the sarcophagus into his storage bracelet. Although the sarcophagus looked rough, it was able to maintain a low temperature. He didn't know what kind of stone it was made of, but it should be something good. After putting away the sarcophagus, Yang Tian planned to leave. He picked up the woman from the ground and walked out. Although it was troublesome, Yang Tian wanted to take her away from this place and then find a way to settle her down. Yang Tian didn't dare to touch the black and white beads in her hand because he felt that the reason why she was still alive was because of the two round beads in her hand. If he took them away from the woman, she might die immediately. Yang Tian didn't want to mess up the task given to him by Grandfather Hong, although Grandfather Hong didn't tell him in detail. This was also Yang Tian's way of repaying Grandfather Hong and Gao Yuan. As for how to leave this huge red ball after bringing the woman out of the stone room, Yang Tian didn't think about it for the time being. As long as a person was alive, there would always be a way to deal with difficulties. Rumble. When Yang Tian carried the woman out of the underground stone room, the foundation of the palace began to shake as if an earthquake had occurred. Yang Tian immediately quickened his pace. When Yang Tian came out of the underground passage, the ground collapsed with a rumble, burying the underground stone room. It seemed that there was an exquisite mechanism below. After the woman left the stone room, the mechanism would immediately activate and bury the stone room. When Yang Tian left the collapsed pit and found a flat place, he was about to put down the woman in his arms. He looked down and found that the woman had opened her eyes. The woman's eyes were blue, watery, and incomparably pure. This situation gave Yang Tian a big fright. He almost couldn't help but throw the woman in his arms away. The woman's expression was very calm. After opening her eyes, she stared at Yang Tian without blinking. "Oh, I'm sorry." Yang Tian smiled and immediately placed the woman gently on the flat ground. This woman was already awake, so it was easy to deal with. Bringing a person who could move was more convenient than bringing a person who was asleep. However, the woman only opened her eyes and lay motionless on the ground. What was going on? Since this woman had opened her eyes, she must be awake. How could she be motionless? Squeak, squeak. At this time, the little blue dragon let out a cry. It told Yang Tian that there was a problem with the 2 pearls in the woman's hands. Yang Tian also felt that these 2 pearls must have some special effect on this woman. It was either to maintain her life or to seal her away. Yang Tian hesitated whether he should take the 2 pearls from the woman's hands. While he was hesitating, the woman's body also had some changes. She actually trembled slightly. At the same time, the woman's calm face suddenly became a little distorted, as if she was in pain. Seeing the expression on the woman's face, Yang Tian immediately understood what to do. These 2 pearls must have some kind of sealing effect. Yang Tian no longer hesitated. He immediately squatted down and took the 2 pearls from the woman's hands. These 2 pearls, one black and one white, seemed very heavy. After leaving the woman's palm, they broke with a pa sound. As soon as the pearls left her body, the woman immediately sat up from the ground and looked at Yang Tian with a sullen expression. This woman was too beautiful. Even if she was angry, she was filled with a seductive smell. Sorry. Yang Tian looked at the woman's angry expression and scratched his head with a smile. The woman quietly stared at Yang Tian for a while before standing up from the ground. After standing up, a powerful aura suddenly erupted from the woman's body. Too powerful. Yang Tian suddenly felt that standing in front of this woman was like facing a mountain that was pressing down on him. He felt a little breathless. Perhaps this was a way for a woman to display her strength. Very quickly, she restrained her aura and became calm. Yang Tian could not help but let out a long breath. The aura of this woman in front of him was even slightly inferior to Grand Duke Hong and Gao Yuan. At this time, the woman looked around and did not immediately speak to Yang Tian. A moment later, she suddenly opened her mouth and spat out a small ring. This small ring seemed to be made of blue crystal, emitting a blue light. After putting the ring on her finger, the woman raised her hand and drew a circle in the air. Her movements were very beautiful. In an instant, a 5-colored light appeared from her hand. It was very dazzling. Yang Tian could not help but blink his eyes. When Yang Tian recovered his vision, he was surprised to find that the beautiful woman in front of him had already put on a gorgeous blue robe. The robe covered her beautiful body, which was faintly discernible. In addition to clothes, many exquisite accessories appeared on the woman's body. An invisible, faint, majestic aura was emitted from her body. Compared to before, this woman's temperament had changed. Temperament and aura were completely different. Just now, the powerful aura emitted from the woman's body made Yang Tian feel very uncomfortable. But now, feeling the woman's superior and noble temperament, Yang Tian did not feel uncomfortable. The woman's temperament was not something that could be set off by her clothes. It seemed that a long time ago, this woman must have been a very powerful woman in the universe. Yang Tian could not help but think of the superstar divine temple. Yang Tian became more and more curious about the superstar divine temple. At the same time, he also thought of Qin Fei. He did not know if Qin Fei would be happy after becoming the goddess of the superstar divine temple. The woman, who had changed her makeup, looked at Yang Tian quietly again and suddenly asked, "What's your name?" The woman suddenly spoke, causing Yang Tian to be startled. After he reacted, he immediately replied, "My name is Yang Tian. What about you?" The woman did not answer Yang Tian's question and said her name. Instead, she said, "Thank you very much for unlocking the seal on my body and allowing me to regain my freedom. What do you want? Maybe I can help you do it." "I want a lot of things," Yang Tian replied. "I want to leave this place. I want to obtain great power. I want to find Qin Fei and let her return to my side. Can you help me achieve these things?" As soon as Yang Tian's voice fell, the woman suddenly laughed and said, "Leaving this place is very simple. It's also very simple to make you very strong. As for the person you want to find, when you become very strong, you can go anywhere and see anyone." Yang Tian nodded. Of course, he understood this principle. In the universe, as long as one became stronger, one would be able to do more and more things. One could even do as one pleased. After the woman finished speaking, She did not ask Yang Tian again. Instead, she raised her hand. Suddenly, a powerful force wrapped Yang Tian and the little blue dragon. While Yang Tian and the little blue dragon were startled, their bodies started to spin uncontrollably, and their vision became blurry. This situation lasted for less than 2 seconds. When his body suddenly stopped and his vision recovered, Yang Tian found that he had returned to the white world outside the red sphere. He was stepping on white gravel, and countless red, lightning bolts were falling from the sky. Yang Tian was very familiar with this situation. The countless lightning bolts that struck down from above were blocked by an invisible force. When they were more than 10 meters above Yang Tian's head, they suddenly disappeared. Yang Tian glanced to his side at this time. The powerful woman he brought out of the stone room was looking up at the sky. She used her powerful strength to arrange an energy shield around her to resist the bombardment of the red lightning. When the countless lightning bolts disappeared, one could see that a huge red sphere was still suspended in the sky. Seeing this huge red sphere, a trace of hatred appeared in the woman's eyes. Chapter 269. Seeing the hatred in the woman's eyes, Yang Tian narrowed his eyes. He wondered if she would destroy this giant sphere. Yang Tian had also guessed a little about this woman's hatred. This red sphere was the place where she was sealed, and to her it was like a cage. After the small red mist-like spheres in the sky exploded, the falling lightning disappeared, and the sky became clear again. But this was only temporary. The giant red sphere would continue to create many smaller red spheres. Then, after the small red spheres exploded, there would be more. It was like there was no end to it. Yang Tian did not understand. After the one-eyed man refined the body of the man in white, how could there be so many stellar crystals? Also, how were these stellar crystals formed in the red sphere? These were the questions that Yang Tian had in his mind. Yang Tian did not have the chance to find out more. Suddenly, the woman moved and rushed toward the red sphere in the sky. She was like a ray of light. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared from Yang Tian's sight. A few minutes later, there was a loud boom. There was a violent explosion in the sky. The entire space was instantly covered by a blinding red light. The shockwave from the explosion first fell on this floating piece of land. It was like it was blown by a hurricane. The small white stones and sand on the ground were blown up by the airflow. They formed a red sand mist and rushed toward Yang Tian from the front. Yang Tian was shocked. He turned around and ran. He only stopped when he saw a giant stone pillar in front of him and hid behind it. Boom! Yang Tian had just hidden himself when the violent white sand mist hit the giant stone pillar. The broken stones carried by the wind hit the stone pillars, creating a series of crackling sounds. The stone pillars that weighed several thousand kilograms were blown away and rolled around. Luckily, this white sand storm was only the shockwave of the explosion. It did not last long. In less than a minute, it began to weaken. Yang Tian stood up from behind the stone pillar. He shook his body and short hair and spat out the sand that splashed into his mouth. The little blue dragon on his shoulder was also covered in white dust. It was like a white dragon. It shook its body and shook off the dust on its body. But it was not over yet. After the white sand and dust, dense red fragments began to fall from the sky. Slap! When Yang Tian stood up and spat out the sand in his mouth, a small piece of the red sphere fell not far away from Yang Tian and broke into pieces. Recalling his experience in the red sphere, Yang Tian felt disgusted when he saw these things. One must know that these fragments were the eyeball tissue of the one-eyed man. Most of these red pieces that fell were burning. When they fell, they were like meteorites falling from the sky. When they fell to the ground, most of them were burned black and emitted black smoke. There was the smell of barbecued meat. Yang Tian covered his nose with his hand and kept moving quickly to avoid the pieces of meat that fell from the sky. After a few minutes, it finally calmed down. At this time, Yang Tian looked up at the sky. The scene that appeared in front of him made his eyes widen. His eyes were full of excitement. It turned out that after the explosion of the giant red sphere in the sky, it produced a large number of stellar crystals. These stars were suspended in the sky, reflecting blue light. It looked like a dense cluster of stars in the sky. It looked very beautiful. Great. Xiaolong, let's go up. Yang Tian immediately said to the little blue dragon on his shoulder. Squeak. The little blue dragon let out an excited cry and quickly transformed into a giant dragon. Yang Tian immediately jumped onto the little blue dragon's back. The little blue dragon swayed its body and swam close to the ground. Then, it raised its head and rushed into the sky. After ascending a few hundred meters, Yang Tian was delighted to find that without the giant red sphere, the resistance layer above the land had disappeared. The little blue dragon carried Yang Tian and quickly reached a height of more than 1,000 meters. What appeared in front of him were countless stellar crystals. These stellar crystals were like pieces of gravel. They were irregularly shaped. The big ones were as big as a cow, and the small ones were smaller than a grain of rice. These stellar crystals were attracted by the land below and were slowly descending. In less than half an hour, these stellar crystals would fall to the ground. When the powerful woman brought Yang Tian back to the land, there was not a single person who came here to obtain the stellar crystals. Not even a shadow could be seen. The star mine's owner had a rule that those who came here would only have one day at most. Once the time was up, they must leave. Otherwise, they would be severely punished. This was where the star mine's owner was smart. Because of this, not many people would die when they entered this place. It would not cause too much psychological damage to those who came here. After those who came here left, they would adjust their psychological state after a night. It was better that no one was here. No one would compete with Yang Tian for these stellar crystals. Yang Tian could calmly collect them. Collect. Looking at the large amount of stellar crystals in front of him, Yang Tian shouted and opened his storage bracelet. Countless stellar crystals poured into Yang Tian's storage bracelet like a tidal wave. After collecting a piece of stellar crystal, the little blue dragon did not need Yang Tian to remind it. It quickly rushed to the next piece of stellar crystal. The little blue dragon's choice was very reasonable. The stellar crystals it chose were the ones closest to the ground. When these stellar crystals were in the air, they were the easiest to collect. If they fell to the ground and mixed with the gravel, it would be difficult to collect them. As the little blue dragon moved quickly, large amounts of stellar crystals entered Yang Tian's storage bracelet. I'm rich. I'm rich. In the process of collecting these stellar crystals, Yang Tian was so excited that he kept shouting in his heart. One must know that these stellar crystals could not only be used to attract energy, but they were also a hard currency in the universe. Collecting these stellar crystals was no different from picking up money. The little blue dragon's eyes were also shining with excitement. Its speed became faster and faster. Sometimes, Yang Tian was too busy, or when he encountered a piece of smaller stellar crystal, he would directly fly over, open his mouth, and suck the stellar crystal into his mouth. Yang Tian and the little blue dragon both understood that after the huge sphere in the sky disappeared, there would be no more stellar crystals here. The star mine owner who received the news would definitely come here as soon as possible. Yang Tian had already seen the power of the star mine owner. He did not want any accidents to happen. While Yang Tian was collecting the stellar crystals, the powerful woman had already landed on the ground. She was looking up at Yang Tian and the little blue dragon. The corner of her mouth was slightly raised, and her face was full of smiles. Chapter 270. Now that she was so strong, these stellar crystals were no longer attractive to her. The way this strong woman looked at Yang Tian was like how a rich person would look at a beggar picking up coins on the ground. After collecting a large number of stellar crystals, Yang Tian couldn't help but laugh out loud. This was a great harvest. He didn't even know how many stellar crystals he had collected. He estimated that it would be enough to buy hundreds or thousands of spaceships. Half an hour later, there weren't many stellar crystals left in the sky. What was left were all small pieces. Yang Tian was no longer interested in spending a lot of time collecting these stellar crystals. He let the little blue dragon land on the ground. As the little blue dragon landed on the ground, Yang Tian naturally saw the powerful woman. This mysterious and powerful woman was looking at him with a smile. The little blue dragon landed beside the woman with Yang Tian on its back. When Yang Tian jumped down from the little blue dragon, the woman looked at Yang Tian and smiled. "Now are you satisfied?" Yang Tian smiled and nodded. "Thank you." The woman shook her head and said, "This is what you deserve. It doesn't count as my promise to you." "Oh." Yang Tian scratched his head. "Now, we can leave this place," the woman said to Yang Tian and turned to walk forward. The woman's steps were very fast. Yang Tian could only chase after her with all his might. More than 10 minutes later, the woman brought Yang Tian to the edge of this piece of land. There were many exits at the edge of this piece of land. The woman brought Yang Tian to one of the exits. This exit looked like a small piece of water that was constantly twisting and moving. At this moment, the woman looked at this exit and said to Yang Tian, "The thing you want me to do for you, I will definitely do it." After saying that, she glanced at the little blue dragon on Yang Tian's shoulder and praised, "This pet beast of yours is pretty good." "Squeak, squeak," the little blue dragon responded proudly. Yang Tian also laughed. However, when this woman praised the little blue dragon, Yang Tian was a little worried. If this woman wanted the little blue dragon as her pet beast, then it would be troublesome. Yang Tian knew that he couldn't beat her. Yang Tian was surprised. Ever since he left the Crimson Flame Star, most of the people he met were much stronger than him. This was too much of a blow to his confidence. Fortunately, the woman only praised the little blue dragon and didn't mean anything else. Seeing the worry that flashed across Yang Tian's eyes, the woman smiled and said, "Do you want to obtain great power directly, or do you want me to guide you on the path of becoming a powerhouse?" After saying that, the woman stared into Yang Tian's eyes. Yang Tian didn't avoid this strong woman's gaze and answered without even thinking, "Of course it's a path of becoming a powerhouse." Although Yang Tian really wanted to obtain great power immediately, he still had to save some face in front of this woman, right? Also, only power that was obtained through one's own efforts truly belonged to oneself. Yang Tian obviously understood this principle. In fact, because of this woman, Yang Tian had indirectly obtained great power. Absorbing a small portion of the stellar crystals in the storage bracelet would allow him to advance to the planetary state domain lord realm, or even surpass the planetary state and become a stellar state powerhouse. Also, Yang Tian just came out from Earth and didn't know much about the situation in the universe. From Yang Tian's eyes, the woman knew that Yang Tian was telling the truth. She nodded and said to Yang Tian, "If you're done with your business, you can go to planet Kaitra. There's a superstar academy on that planet. With your current state, you should be able to enter that academy. If you really can't show this, someone will see it and help you." After saying that, a purple triangular crystal appeared in the woman's hand. This purple crystal had many mysterious runes carved on it, and it emitted waves of energy waves. One could tell at a glance that it was extremely precious. Yang Tian took the purple crystal from the woman and smiled. "Thank you." After giving the purple crystal to Yang Tian, the woman turned around and walked towards the exit. Yang Tian knew that if he left, he wouldn't be able to see this woman again. He immediately said loudly, "Please wait." The woman stopped and turned around. She looked at Yang Tian with a smile and asked, "Is there anything else?" Yang Tian scratched his head and said, "I still don't know your name." The woman said, "With your current state, you're not qualified to know my name. However, you can call me Goddess." After saying that, the woman smiled and turned around. She walked into the exit and disappeared. Sigh. Yang Tian sighed and turned around. He smiled bitterly at the little blue dragon and said, "I'm being looked down on again. Xiaolong, I'll definitely defeat her in the future." After saying that, Yang Tian narrowed his eyes and his body emitted a strong battle intent. This was the first time that he was looked down on by a woman. Squeak, squeak. The little blue dragon waved its claws and let out a squeak. It said to Yang Tian, "After defeating such a beautiful woman, you can make her your wife." "Ha ha!" After the little blue dragon finished speaking, Yang Tian laughed and walked towards the exit. After entering the exit, the space in front of Yang Tian distorted. Then, a familiar scene appeared in front of his eyes. At this moment, he was surrounded by red magma. Dozens of meters in front of him, there was a teleportation array disk emitting blue light. A subordinate of the star mine was already lying on the ground. The armor on his body had been shattered, and his body was constantly twitching. When this person saw Yang Tian appear, he stretched out his hand to Yang Tian and chuckled. It seemed that he wanted to get Yang Tian's help. Yang Tian thought for a moment, walked past this person, and stepped onto the array disk. The star mine owner had almost killed Yang Tian before. Yang Tian naturally did not have a good impression of the star mine owner's subordinate. Moreover, this person was not a good person. When the blue light in front of him disappeared, Yang Tian appeared in a small town on Lugu planet. There are no particularly tall buildings on Lugu planet. Most of the cultivators in the universe came here to enter the star mine owner's small world and obtain a large number of stellar crystals. After achieving their goal, they would leave. Therefore, the star mine owner did not spend much effort to build this planet. This small town was different from the small town Yang Tian had first come to Lugu planet. It was early in the morning, and a large number of people were gathering at the small management office. When he saw these people, Yang Tian could not help but laugh. He could imagine what kind of situation these people would be in when they went to the small world. There would be no more red spheres in the sky, and there would be no more lightning falling. Of course, there would not be a large number of stellar crystals being produced. Yang Tian had only taken a few steps in the small town when he noticed that someone was following him. There were not many people in each small town. Once a stranger appeared, they would be monitored. Yang Tian thought that he had to leave this place immediately. After looking at the surrounding buildings, Yang Tian turned around and walked along the street toward a circular stone building about 3 meters tall. Seven Light Rain had told Yang Tian that these circular buildings in the small town were teleportation points. Chapter 271. On the Lego planet, the price of teleporting between towns was very cheap. However, teleporting from one planet to another was ridiculously expensive. This was, of course, a method used by the star mine's owner to control and amass wealth. Yang Tian didn't remember the name of the town he had been in previously, but he knew its serial number. After entering the teleportation area of this town, Yang Tian took out a piece of star gold and handed it to the manager. Go to town 703. The manager of this teleportation area was a skinny, middle-aged man. When he saw the star crystal in Yang Tian's hand, he didn't reach out to take it. Instead, he waved his hand and said, "One piece of star gold isn't enough. Isn't the stipulated price 1 piece of star crystal?" Yang Tian asked, puzzled. The skinny, middle-aged man laughed. "This price was set many years ago. Now, it's 2 pieces of star crystal. If you don't want it, you can leave." When he said this, the skinny, middle-aged man appeared very arrogant. Yang Tian understood that this was the manager raising the price in private. This kind of situation happened everywhere. Yang Tian was helpless. He could only take out another piece of star crystal from his storage bracelet and hand it to the skinny, middle-aged man. When he saw the 2 pieces of star crystal, the skinny, middle-aged man smiled and took them from Yang Tian's hands. Then, he turned around and made some adjustments on the teleportation disk. "It's ready now. Teleport to town 703, the skinny middle-aged man said to Yang Tian after adjusting the teleportation disk. When Yang Tian walked towards the teleportation disk, he saw the skinny middle-aged man put one of the pieces of star crystal into his pocket. What a blatant act of corruption. He wondered if the star mine's owner knew about this. Yang Tian shook his head helplessly. When Yang Tian walked out of the teleportation disk, he had already arrived at town 703. He appeared at the crossroads where he had been last time. Yang Tian walked out of the array disk and got off the teleportation platform. He looked around and headed straight for 7 Light Rain's store. At this time, 7 Light Rain was lying on his counter with one hand supporting his head. His eyes fell on the spaceship models on the transparent counter, and he looked a little lonely. This was because she thought that Yang Tian was already dead. The people who should have returned had already returned 2 days ago. However, among these people, she did not see Yang Tian's figure. She did not even see the little blue dragon. While Seven Light Rain was staring at the spaceship model in a daze, her vision suddenly turned dark. Someone had blocked the light from outside. Seven Light Rain woke up, and a habitual smile appeared on her face. She raised her head, thinking that there was a customer. What appeared before her eyes was Yang Tian's smiling face. Ah! When she saw that it was Yang Tian, Seven Light Rain couldn't help but scream and stand up. Yang Tian chuckled. "Beauty, long time no see. Why are you still alive?" Seven Light Rain couldn't believe her eyes. After saying that, she even raised her hand and rubbed her eyes. Squeak, squeak. At this time, the little blue dragon lying on Yang Tian's shoulder cried out twice. It felt that it was being ignored again. "Little guy, you're also fine. That's great." Seven Light Rain nodded at the little blue dragon. Only then was the little blue dragon satisfied. "I just came out. Don't tell anyone," Yang Tian said again. Then, he winked at Seven Light Rain. "Oh, so that's how it is. Then you must not tell anyone. This is against the rules. If you get caught, you'll be in trouble," Seven Light Rain said and glanced outside the store. Seeing that no one was paying attention to her store, Seven Light Rain was finally relieved. She then whispered to Yang Tian, "You dared to stay inside for so long. When you came out, did you bribe those managers?" Yang Tian shook his head. Then, he turned around and closed the door. Once the door was closed, the automatic lights inside lit up. At this time, Yang Tian took out a large pile of stellar crystals from his storage bracelet. Seeing so many stellar crystals in front of her, Seven Light Rain couldn't help but open her eyes wide in surprise. This was the first time she had seen so many stellar crystals. She opened her mouth wide and was speechless for a moment. Yang Tian pointed at the stellar crystals and said with a smile, "These stellar crystals are all yours now." Yang Tian naturally couldn't give her 5% of the stellar crystals he obtained, because it was too much, and Yang Tian couldn't bear to do so. The stellar crystals he took out now, if converted to a standard volume, would be more than 1,000 pieces. For Seven Light Rain, 1,000 pieces of star crystals was equivalent to her income for a few years. "You gain a lot this time," Seven Light Rain said excitedly. Yang Tian only nodded with a smile. Seven Light Rain immediately took out a jar-shaped storage tool from under the counter and put all the stellar crystals that Yang Tian gave her into this crude-looking storage tool. During this process, Yang Tian noticed that there were many runes engraved on the surface of this jar-like storage tool. After putting away the stellar crystals, Seven Light Rain looked at Yang Tian with a smile and said, "Now, you have the money to buy my spaceship, right?" Yang Tian nodded with a smile and said, "Of course. That's great." Seven Light Rain shouted happily. For her, this was another source of income. Then, Seven Light Rain took out dozens of spaceship models from the counter and let Yang Tian choose. Boom! Just as Yang Tian was looking at the spaceship models, a loud noise suddenly came from outside. Then, the ground shook, and Seven Light Rain's store also shook. What was going on? Yang Tian frowned. Just as Yang Tian turned around and was about to open the door and go out to see what was going on, he heard many people running outside. There were also some voices. "Why are you running? There's something interesting to see. The Star Mine owner is fighting with a woman. They were the ones who caused the commotion just now." "Yeah, I heard that the woman even destroyed the Star Mine owner's small world. From now on, there won't be any more stellar crystals." "That can't be. If that's true, then it's such a pity. We have to find a way to leave this place, but the teleportation fee is too expensive." Before he opened the door, Yang Tian could already hear many of these loud voices. Yang Tian immediately opened the door and saw people running on the street. They were all running toward the direction of the explosion. Boom! At this time, there was another loud noise. This time, the commotion was even more violent than the previous one. Moreover, it was closer to town 703. Yang Tian laughed and thought to himself, "It would be great if the goddess could kill the Star Mine master. Even if the Star Mine owner didn't die, under such circumstances, the Star Mine owner wouldn't notice him." It was a good time to leave. Although he had such thoughts in his mind, Yang Tian immediately ran toward the direction of the sound. Like many cultivators in the universe, if there was a chance to see a battle between experts, they definitely wouldn't miss it. Yang Tian's speed was very fast, surpassing most of the cultivators on this planet. Soon, he ran out of the town. More than 10 minutes later, Yang Tian arrived at the location of the battle between the female expert and the star mine owner. At this time, the battle was about to end. Chapter 272. What appeared in front of Yang Tian was a huge pit. The female expert, who had just separated from Yang Tian, was standing at the edge of the pit. The breeze blew her gorgeous robe, making her look like a goddess from the divine realm. Of course, this was what Yang Tian felt. Yang Tian, who had come from Earth, had heard a lot of mythical stories. Yang Tian did not know if the other onlookers felt the same way. However, at this moment, all the men's eyes were filled with a stunning light. This woman was not only powerful, but also very beautiful. Cough, cough, cough. Suddenly, a coughing sound came from the pit. Then, a figure jumped out of the pit. This person was very fast. After he rushed 100 meters into the air, he suddenly turned around and pressed down. During this process, he suddenly stretched out his hand and slapped down at the female expert. The powerful palm force produced an ear-piercing whistling sound. In the face of this powerful palm, the female expert did not move at all. No, Yang Tian soon saw that the woman had already dodged. However, her speed was extremely fast. She had left her original position, but her figure was still there. Even Yang Tian's visual nerves could not keep up with the woman's speed. With a boom, the palm force that came from the sky slapped a huge palm print on the hard ground. The place where the woman had been standing was the center of the palm print. The person who came out of the pit and slapped the female expert from the sky was the star mine's owner. After he landed, he did not look at the huge palm print he had slapped out. Instead, he looked around for the woman who had disappeared. Although he was far away, Yang Tian could still see the panic on the star mine's owner's face. All of a sudden, a figure flashed past the star quarry's master. The speed was so fast that even Yang Tian could only see an afterimage. The afterimage flashed and suddenly stopped. At this time, the star mine's owner had his mouth wide open and was in a daze. The woman who was passing by him suddenly stopped. Ugh! Suddenly, the star mine owner let out a groan and fell to the ground with a thud. When his body came into contact with the ground, it actually shattered into pieces. The powerful star mine master was actually dismembered. What surprised Yang Tian was that the star mine owner was not dead yet. His broken body began to melt like a piece of wax being baked. Then it began to reassemble. The woman just watched quietly without any expression on her face. No one knew what she was thinking. Soon, the shattered body of the star mine owner was reassembled. After his rebirth, the aura emanating from the star quarry's owner was clearly much weaker. When his body recovered, the naked star mine owner looked at the woman. Suddenly, he turned and ran. He no longer had the energy to continue fighting. Pong! Seeing that the star quarry master was trying to escape, the woman attacked again. She sent a palm strike at the fleeing star quarry master. The palm strike reduced the star quarry master's body into a bloody mist. The bloody mist scattered with the air current caused by the palm strike. Yang Tian's eyes widened again. It turned out that the star mine owner was not dead, even after being injured to such an extent. The flesh and blood that fell to the ground began to reassemble. Soon, the star mine owner's body appeared again. At this time, the aura emitted by the star mine owner was much weaker than before. It seemed that every time he recovered, he would consume a lot of energy. The star mine owner, who had recovered his body again, didn't even have the thought of escaping. He sat on the ground. At this time, the woman slowly walked toward the star mine owner. Looking at the woman getting closer and closer to him, the star mine owner's eyes were filled with horror. His body couldn't help but tremble. This was because if his body was seriously injured again, he wouldn't be able to recover. The star quarry master was shocked, and so was Yang Tian. The process of the star quarry master coming back from the dead was just too miraculous to him. Could it be that this was the ability of life forms after they evolved? Yang Tian knew that the so-called realm was actually the level of life. The higher the realm, the stronger the life force. Constantly becoming stronger was, in fact, constantly evolving. It could allow one to adapt to more complex environments and have stronger destructive power and life force. Yang Tian's current body realm was still at the planet grade, so he couldn't understand how powerful a star-grade body was. The woman soon arrived in front of the star mine owner and looked at him coldly. At this time, the star mine owner lowered his head and smiled bitterly. If I had known this would happen, I would have killed you instead of sealing you. After the star mine owner finished speaking, the woman smiled and said indifferently, "It's useless for you to regret it now. However, if you tell me the instigator, I will let you go today." Ha ha ha. As soon as the woman said that, the star mine owner burst into laughter. At this time, the woman was still expressionless as she looked at the star mine owner quietly. After the star mine owner stopped laughing, he said, "It turns out that you didn't kill me once. Instead, you destroyed my body time and time again so that I would be reborn again and again. You made me weaker and weaker so that I would tell you this secret. However, this is impossible." After saying that, the star mine owner closed his eyes. Then, his body melted again. Soon, it turned into a pool of liquid that seeped into the earth and rocks on the ground. This time, the star mine owner was completely dead. There was no sign of life left. The star mine owner's method of suicide surprised Yang Tian once again. During the process of the star mine owner's self-destruction, the woman just watched quietly. Even a powerful person like her couldn't do anything to a person who was determined to die. After the star mine owner died, the woman glanced at the place where Yang Tian was. Then, her body turned into a stream of light and rushed into the sky. She flew directly into the universe, just like the black-clothed masked man had left Earth. Yang Tian wasn't the only one who was watching this battle. Some people saw the woman leave and sighed with envy. When will I be able to travel the universe with my physical body like her? This kind of sigh expressed the thoughts of many cultivators in the universe. Even Yang Tian felt the same. Like this goddess, who could travel the universe with her physical body, was the true powerhouse in the universe. After the woman left, the spectators curiously walked toward the place where the two people had fought. Looking at the traces left by the two people, these people kept sighing. Yang Tian looked at all this curiously. Suddenly, someone shouted, "The star mine owner is dead. What are we waiting for?" Yes. There must be a lot of star crystals in the star mine owner's manor. What are we waiting for? Let's hurry over as soon as possible. Hearing this, Yang Tian pursed his lips. The person who said this obviously had a purpose. Yang Tian naturally didn't want to get involved. He turned around and walked back. Soon, the sound of fighting came from behind Yang Tian. With the death of the star mine owner, no one could control this planet. In a world without laws and rulers, the strong were respected. Yang Tian could imagine that if there was no other powerhouse to continue ruling Lugu planet, it would soon become extremely chaotic. The chaotic situation quickly spread. When Yang Tian returned to the town, he found that the town had become chaotic. Seven Light Rain was still in his shop. When Yang Tian returned, he closed the door. Soon, the sound of cultivators fighting could be heard outside. At this time, people were fighting everywhere in the town. The streets were full of corpses and blood. It should be known that for so many years, the master of Star Mine and his subordinates had been oppressing the miners who came to this planet. The grudge between the two sides had been very deep. If it wasn't for the Star Mine owner's strength, these miners would have already exploded. They wouldn't have waited until now. With the death of the Star Mine owner, the conflict was immediately aroused. After the miners received the news of the Star Mine owner's death, they immediately attacked the management offices in the various towns. The subordinates of the Star Mine owner also immediately united to resist the attacks of the miners. During this process, the miners also killed each other in order to snatch star crystals. Hearing the sounds coming from outside, Seven Light Rain was very scared. Fortunately, Yang Tian was here, so she felt at ease. Yang Tian heard the shouts outside and frowned. He knew that even if he hid in the house, he couldn't avoid it. Chapter 273. Why don't we hide in the back? Hearing the sounds coming from outside, Seven Light Rain was a little scared and said worriedly, "There was a room in the back of the store, and there was a door in the room. It would be safer if they hid inside." Yang Tian was touching the red blade of the long saber in his hand. When he heard Seven Light Rain's words, he turned around with a smile and said to Seven Light Rain, "There are some things that you can't hide from even if you want to. Even if you go to the back, it's useless. If someone comes in, they will search the room." "Oh." Seven Light Rain nodded. Bang! A loud sound was heard. A loud sound came from next door. It sounded like the door was kicked open. Then, there were mournful screams and pleas for mercy. Following that, there was a burst of laughter. The entire town was in chaos. At this moment, some people with ulterior motives were taking advantage of this opportunity to rob. Hearing the miserable screams coming from next door, Yang Tian stood up and walked toward the door. "Don't go out," Seven Light Rain hurriedly said. Looking at her appearance, she was afraid that Yang Tian would leave and abandon her. Yang Tian stopped and helplessly sighed. The entire town was in chaos. There were many innocent people who were killed. He couldn't save everyone. He could only ensure that Seven Light Rain was safe. Bang, bang, bang. At this moment, there was a knock on the door of the store. Then, a young man's voice came from outside. "Sister, quickly open the door." "It's Guang Hao." "Who's Guang Hao?" Yang Tian turned around and asked Seven Light Rain. Only then did Seven Light Rain react and immediately said, "Quickly open the door. It's Guang Hao." Seven Light Rain was also anxious. She only said the other party's name and didn't say who it was. However, Yang Tian knew that the young man outside was someone she was familiar with. Yang Tian nodded and opened the door. When the door opened, what appeared in front of Yang Tian was a 16 or 17-year-old young man. The young man had short hair and was wearing old, tight-fitting gray clothes. He was also holding a saber in his hand. Right at this moment, a burly man pounced towards the youth. His speed was extremely fast. The young man didn't seem to notice anything as he stared blankly at Yang Tian. The big man behind him had a maniacal smile on his face as he held his saber with both hands and slashed towards the young man's head. If the young man hadn't dodged in time, the blade would have split him in half. This young man was actually Seven Light Rain's younger brother. His name was Seven Light Hao. When the door opened, he didn't expect the young man to appear and couldn't help but be stunned. Suddenly, Yang Tian raised his saber and slashed at him. Yang Tian's speed was very fast, and Seven Light Hao felt powerless to dodge. He could not help but widen his eyes. At this moment, Qi Guang Hao thought that Yang Tian was also a bad person. When the sound was heard, Qi Guang Hao saw a red light fly past his leader and fly backwards. Almost in an instant, a PU sound came from behind him, followed by the sound of a weapon falling to the ground. So there was someone behind him. Qi Guang Hao immediately turned his head and saw a strong man's head being chopped off. The head rolled to the side, and the body was still trembling nonstop. Seeing this, Qi Guang Hao felt a lingering fear. Only then did he know that it was Yang Tian who saved him. At this moment, Seven Light Rain appeared behind Yang Tian and asked Qi Guang Hao, "Why are you here?" Qi Guang Hao scratched his head and said, "Sister, I'm very worried about you. Now that the town is so chaotic, it's very dangerous for you to stay here." After Qi Guang Hao finished speaking, Qi Guang Yu said with a worried expression, "Since you're here, where's your sister?" "My sister is at home," Qi Guang Hao replied. This time, Yang Tian understood. So, Seven Light Rain had a younger brother and a younger sister. The people in the town were in a killing frenzy. At this moment, a few people saw Yang Tian and the others and rushed towards Yang Tian's group with weapons. Seeing this, Yang Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. Looking at the aura of these people, they weren't very strong. Rushing over was nothing more than courting death. Their faces were filled with madness, and their hearts were filled with killing intent. They had probably forgotten to think. Even if they were facing people who were much stronger than them, they would still rush forward. After being suppressed for a long time on this planet, once it erupted, the destructive power was very shocking. Many people had now become madmen, using killing to release the depression that had been suppressed for many years. A total of 5 people rushed over from 2 sides. Yang Tian casually waved his blade a few times, and each time, a red wind blade was emitted from the blade. With a few pu-pu sounds, the 5 people were chopped into pieces by Yang Tian's blade Qi. Seeing this, Qi Guanghao's eyes widened. He had never seen someone as strong as Yang Tian. At this moment, he looked at Yang Tian with eyes full of worship. Yang Tian once saw this kind of gaze when he was still in high school on Earth. When he saw those warriors, they also had this kind of gaze. This kind of gaze wasn't just worship, it also represented the pursuit of great power. What do we do now? Qi Guangyu looked at Yang Tian with a pleading gaze. Yang Tian understood what Qi Guangyu meant. She wanted him to protect the siblings back home. Yang Tian nodded and said to Qi Guanghao, "You lead the way." With that, Yang Tian said to the little blue dragon on his shoulder, "Xiaolong, clean up the back." The little blue dragon nodded in agreement. "Okay, please follow me," Qi Guanghao said as he turned around and ran along the street. Yang Tian smiled as he looked at Qi Guanghao's back. He thought to himself, this guy is young, but he's a very straightforward person. Yang Tian stepped forward and followed the young man, walking side by side with Qi Guangyu following closely behind Yang Tian. Although the town wasn't big, the population was very dense. Once chaos broke out, it was like an army going berserk. No one trusted the people around them and was afraid that they would attack them. In order to survive, they could only throw caution to the wind and attack each other crazily. In this way, the constant killing soon made them lose their rationality, and the town became more and more chaotic. In this process, the civilians who didn't have any martial arts skills became innocent victims. As they moved forward, there were people constantly rushing over, but they were all killed by Yang Tian with a single slash. If there were people rushing from behind, the little blue dragon would move out with a flash of a green shadow and claw their eyes blind, leaving behind a trail of miserable howls. In this process, Qi Guanghao saw that no one was a match for Yang Tian. As long as Yang Tian slashed out with a saber, no matter how strong the opponent was, they would be killed by the saber aura released by Yang Tian. He's really too powerful. If only I had his ability, no matter where I go in the future, my sister wouldn't be bullied by others. Qi Guanghao fantasized as he walked quickly. Qi Guangyu's store wasn't very far from her residence, and they arrived in less than 10 minutes. This was a remote area in the outskirts of the town. Although the population was dense, there weren't many cultivators in the universe, and they hadn't come here yet. This remote area was filled with small stone houses. The young man brought Yang Tian to the door of a small stone house. "Qi Kai, open the door," Qi Guanghao shouted as he knocked on the door. "Big brother." A girl's voice came from the stone house, and the door was opened. Qi Guanghao pulled Qi Guangyu into the stone house. When Yang Tian entered, he immediately closed the door. The stone house's furnishings were simple, and the space was small, but it was clean. Yang Tian gave it a glance, then asked Qi Guangyu, "Which store is the biggest? Why don't you stay there?" Qi Guangyu said helplessly, "That place doesn't belong to us." Yang Tian immediately understood. The store on the street didn't belong to Qi Guangyu. Qi Guangyu was only working there. Boom! All of a sudden, there was a loud explosion from outside. This was not the sound of destruction from a battle between elites, but the sound of a bomb exploding. Chapter 274. As soon as the explosion sounded, Yang Tian immediately opened the door and rushed out. Woo! Suddenly, a whistling sound came from above. Yang Tian looked up and saw more than a dozen small, triangular airships in the sky. These airships were shooting down bombs and red beams of light. The Star Mine owner's army had finally been mobilized to attack the cultivators in this small town. Boom! 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 A series of explosions rang out. The stone houses in the small town were blown up one after another. Rocks flew everywhere and sparks flew everywhere. Amidst these explosions, there were also the screams and cries of humans. Seeing this, Yang Tian immediately turned around and shouted to Seven Light Rain and the other two, "Let's go. We have to leave this town immediately. We can't stay here any longer." Just as Yang Tian finished speaking, a small spaceship flew past at a low altitude and threw a bomb nearby. With a loud boom, a nearby house was blasted into smithereens. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The airship was still shooting down beams of light. It was unknown what kind of energy these beams were, but they were extremely powerful. When they hit the stone house, they immediately opened up a hole the size of a bowl in the stone wall. The hole was smooth and flat, as if it had been cut out. If these beams of light landed on a human body, what would happen? Yang Tian was terrified just thinking about it. If he had to take these beams of light head-on, it would probably be very difficult. At this moment, in the room, Seven Light Rain held her forehead and shouted, "Sister, what's wrong?" Seven Light How asked with his eyes wide open. "I left the star crystal in the shop. I only realized it when I was packing up," Seven Light Rain said with a distressed expression. Yang Tian turned around and looked at Seven Light Rain with a bitter smile. "Let's go. What are you packing up for? Your life is more important." Sigh. Seven Light Rain sighed helplessly. Then, Seven Light Rain pulled her sister Seven Kai and brother Seven Light How together and followed behind Yang Tian through the alleyway. Because the stone houses were too densely packed together and the alley was narrow, only two people could pass through side by side. When the explosion occurred, many people rushed out of the stone houses. In addition, many of them were carrying things, so they blocked the alley and were unable to pass through. At this time, some young and strong people, or cultivators, jumped onto the roof and ran on it. The roofs of these low stone houses were all flat, making it easy to walk on. However, running on it was the most dangerous. Yang Tian saw a spaceship suddenly speeding towards them, shooting out red light beams at the people running towards them. When the light beams hit the bodies of the people, a large black hole immediately appeared on their bodies. This was simply a massacre. Seeing the situation, Yang Tian frowned. Many of the people killed were innocent civilians. Boom, boom, boom. A few more houses nearby were destroyed by the spaceship's bombs. The shockwave from the explosion created a gust of wind in the alleyway. They were very close. After the explosion and the shockwave passed, Yang Tian could hear the screams and cries for help coming from the location of the explosion. When the screams came, the people in the alleyway became even more panicked. They all climbed onto the roofs, making the situation even more chaotic. As for those small spaceships, they all swooped down and shot at these civilians. Damn! At this time, Yang Tian finally could not hold it in anymore. He shouted and jumped onto the roof with his saber. He had to destroy these spaceships. Otherwise, Yang Tian would not be able to leave this place in peace. Bang! Seeing a spaceship coming in his direction, Yang Tian jumped onto the roof and quickly rushed up. In the eyes of the people below, Yang Tian's figure was as fast as a flash of light. When he was about 100 meters in the air, Yang Tian could already see the small spaceship coming toward him. Staring at the small silver spaceship in front of him, Yang Tian held his saber with both hands and slashed down. Whoosh! A sharp red wind blade rushed toward the small spaceship. Yang Tian did not use his spiritual power. After the wind blade was released, it became bigger and bigger as it rushed forward. BZZT! Boom! The small spaceship was hit by the red wind blade. Although it was not cut open from head to tail, it still exploded and turned into a ball of fire. Nice! At this time, Qi Guanghao, who saw this from below, clenched his fist and shouted. The explosion of a spaceship immediately attracted the attention of the other spaceship pilots. As Yang Tian was falling, there were a total of 15 spaceships that turned around and gathered toward Yang Tian. They were very fast. Squeak, squeak. Seeing so many spaceships rushing over, the little blue dragon that had been lying on Yang Tian's shoulder suddenly roared twice. Then, it turned into a green shadow and rushed forward. Roar! Almost in the blink of an eye, a green dragon appeared in the sky. Yang Tian, on the other hand, kicked his legs in the air and used the rebound force of the air to rush toward the little blue dragon. He flipped over and landed on the little blue dragon's back. Before Yang Tian's feet could stand firm, he quickly slashed out 15 times with his saber. 15 red wind blades, under the control of his spiritual power, rushed toward the 15 spaceships in different directions. Although the speed of these spaceships was fast, in Yang Tian's eyes, they were extremely slow. Boom! Boom! In an instant, 2 spaceships were slashed and exploded into a ball of fire. The pilots of the remaining 13 spaceships reacted extremely quickly and dodged Yang Tian's red wind blades. Although he missed, Yang Tian laughed. BZZT! Boom! Between the dragon horns of the little blue dragon, a bolt of lightning suddenly shot out and struck a small spaceship. The powerful electric current instantly detonated the spaceship. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. These spaceships were not to be trifled with. As they flew, they fired a dense red beam of light at the little blue dragon. The destructive power of this beam of light was extremely strong. Yang Tian had already seen it. At this time, he could not help but worry. The little blue dragon was too big of a target in the air. But in the face of these beams of light, the little blue dragon was unmoved and allowed the red beams to hit its body, making a burst of sound. During this process, Yang Tian discovered that the surface of the little blue dragon's body was actually emitting a green halo. It was this halo that blocked these fierce red beams of light. The little blue dragon had advanced again. Yang Tian immediately understood and could not help but feel happy for the little blue dragon. These beams of light hit the little blue dragon's body, but it was useless. To the little blue dragon, it was like scratching an itch. BZZT! Boom! Yang Tian was not idle. He slashed out again and turned a spaceship into a ball of flames. There were 11 spaceships left. At this time, the little blue dragon finally moved. With a swing of its dragon tail, its body trembled. Yang Tian, who was standing on the little blue dragon's back, suddenly felt his legs go numb. He could not help but jump up. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he slashed out a few more times in the air. Yang Tian, who had left the little blue dragon, noticed a burst of powerful energy fluctuations coming from the little blue dragon. Then, with a flash of green, the little blue dragon's huge body turned into a series of afterimages and rushed toward the spaceships that were flying around arrogantly in the air. Boom! A spaceship was hit by Yang Tian's red wind blade and exploded. There were 10 spaceships left. In fact, after these spaceships realized that they could not hurt the little blue dragon, they had turned around and were ready to escape. Boom! 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 As Yang Tian was falling, the remaining 10 spaceships exploded one after another. In the eyes of those below, there was a green shadow moving at high speed in the sky. Wherever the green shadow passed, the spaceships would explode. When Yang Tian landed, the little blue dragon had also ended its battle. It transformed back into a mini little blue dragon and landed on Yang Tian's shoulder. After swallowing the eye of the one-eyed elite, the little blue dragon's strength had obviously increased a lot. Even the speed of its transformation was as fast as lightning. Chapter 275. Let's go. Leave this place immediately. Yang Tian, who landed beside 7 Light Rain, completely ignored the respectful gazes of the people around him and said with a frown, although these spaceships were destroyed, the star mine owner subordinates would also receive the news. Perhaps more spaceships would come, or perhaps even more powerful people would come. Yang Tian didn't believe that the star mine owner didn't have anyone stronger than him. With no spaceships in the sky, the people crowded in the alleyway no longer panicked and began to move in an orderly manner. Yang Tian felt that this speed was too slow, so he pulled 7 Light Rain, 7 Light Hao, and 7 Kai onto the roof and moved forward. It was very convenient to walk on the roof because the roof of the house was flat and the height was about the same. The distance between them wasn't too far. so they could cross it with a light step. Soon, the three of them left the town. The attack of the spaceship calmed the people of the town down quite a bit. Many people carried their bags or containers and headed out of the town. After leaving the town, a large number of people dispersed and walked in all directions. Many people's eyes were filled with confusion. After leaving the town this time, many people didn't know where to go. During this process, there were many fights, and the strong bullying the weak. Such things were too common. Yang Tian was helpless about this. No matter how powerful a person was, they couldn't manage so many things. The terrain near the town was very flat with sparse trees. Yang Tian randomly chose a direction and walked forward. 7 Light Rain and her siblings followed closely behind him. After leaving town 703, 7 Light Rain and the others had nowhere to go and were also at a loss. The greater the power of technology, the greater the destruction. In less than an hour, the originally crowded town was destroyed just like that. At this moment, the Star Mine owner's manor was already bustling with activity. A large number of guards in black armor gathered around the manor. Each of them held a weapon in their hands, and their eyes, under the mask, were very vigilant. In a luxurious villa in the manor, many women in silver-white uniforms were walking around. Their expressions were also very serious. The entire villa was filled with a tense atmosphere. Dozens of people were gathered in a meeting room in the villa. There were old and young people, men and women. However, all of them were emitting powerful auras. They were all subordinates of the Star Quarrymaster. When the Star Quarrymaster died, they gathered here to discuss what to do next. The Star Quarrymaster had controlled Lugu planet for many years and had raised a large group of subordinates. Now that the Star Quarrymaster had died, they were all at a loss. Some suggested leaving the planet, while others requested to stay and manage the planet. Although the planet did not produce much, it was still a habitable planet. It would be a pity to give it up. There was also a portion of people who remained silent. They didn't say anything as they quietly watched the others argue. This group of people were the closest subordinates of the Star Quarry's owner. These people naturally knew more than others. What they were thinking about was not the future of the planet, but what they should do after the death of the Star Mine's owner. Among these silent people, there was one young man who stood out the most. When others were talking, they often turned their heads to him, as if to seek his opinion. However, this cold-faced young man had not said a word from beginning to end. It was obvious that his status was the highest among these people. When everyone had expressed their opinions and the meeting room had quieted down, the cold-faced young man said, "What I'm concerned about now is not the planet, but how the Star Quarrymaster was killed. I want to know the identity of that woman." After the young man finished speaking, no one answered him. They didn't know either. Most of the people sitting there had just rushed over. Usually, they were scattered all over the planet. The Star Quarrymaster had been killed too quickly. There had been no warning beforehand. As he looked at the silent crowd, the cold-faced young man's gaze turned colder and colder. His body gradually emitted a domineering aura. Many people could not help but lower their heads. I know, at that moment, the door of the meeting room was pushed open. An unremarkable young man in black clothes appeared. If Yang Tian saw this person, he would definitely be very surprised. This was because he was Ao Chu. A few days ago, Ao Chu's body had been shattered by Yang Tian's saber in the small world. In that small world, Ao Chu had thought that he would die without a doubt. Even though he knew that his body could recover again, concentrated red lightning would fall from the sky every once in a while. Ao Chu's luck was extremely good. His body had recovered, but he had still been struck to death by the red lightning. After coming out of the small world, Ao Chu had gone to the Star Quarrymaster's manor. He planned to immediately leave the planet and return to his own territory after confirming Yang Tian's death. However, things in the universe were so strange. Yang Tian had not died, but the Star Quarrymaster was dead. He had been killed by a woman who had suddenly appeared. Ao Chu's hatred for Yang Tian made him stay, even though his cultivation level had slipped again. As long as Yang Tian was alive, he would feel like there was a fishbone in his throat. "Who are you?" The stern young man looked at Ao Chu, who had suddenly entered, and asked with a frown. Ao Chu smiled and said, I'm friends with the Star Quarrymaster. Something happened in that small world. One of the people involved might be related to this matter. Who is it? The stern young man asked. Yang Tian. Ao Chu said these two words. Where is he? The stern young man asked again. Ao Chu's eyes narrowed slightly. He gritted his teeth and said, he's still on this planet. I've already found out that he should be in town 7:03 now. Men, the stern young man said in a deep voice as soon as Ao Chu finished speaking. Sir, the two tall guards guarding the door immediately walked into the meeting room and bowed. The stern young man glanced at Ao Chu and said, Go to town 7:03 and bring a person called Yang Tian here. Remember, I want him alive. Yes. The two guards bowed and said, Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. While Yang Tian and the others were walking from the distant sky, a dense number of spaceships suddenly flew over. There were no less than 200 of them. Most of these spaceships were silver-white, triangular spaceships. In Yang Tian's opinion, this shape of spaceship was really ugly. It was not even as good as the supersonic fighter jets of the humans on Earth. These spaceships were constantly circling in the sky. They did not attack the people on the ground who were running around because of panic. These spaceships did not attack the people on the ground. Yang Tian was too lazy to care about them. However, it seemed that these spaceships stopped in the sky and kept circling. Their speed was getting slower and slower, as if they were looking for something. It can't be me, right? Yang Tian could not help but think to himself. This was because he and the little blue dragon had destroyed more than a dozen spaceships. The other party was most likely coming for revenge. Yang Tian was not afraid of these spaceships at all. When human cultivators reached a certain level of strength, these high-tech weapons were no longer useful to them. This was because whether it was in terms of speed or reaction, these mechanical things were not as fast as powerful humans. Yang Tian's guess quickly became a reality. Suddenly, a spaceship flew over his head at a low altitude. 3 people jumped out of it. When he saw one of them, Yang Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. He was a little surprised. This person was, of course, Ao Chu. Yang Tian did not expect that Ao Chu was actually not dead. However, the aura on Ao Chu's body had weakened a lot. It was just like when the star mine owner's body was reformed after his body was damaged. Every time he died and reformed his body, it was actually the cells dividing and regenerating. During this process, the cells consumed a lot of energy. The quality of the cells would definitely decrease. This was also completely in accordance with the law of conservation of energy. Along with Ao Chu, there were 2 other burly men in black armor who came down from the spaceship. These 2 people gave Yang Tian the feeling that their realm was not much different from his. Ao Chu looked at Yang Tian and sneered. Yang Tian, we meet again. That's right. Yang Tian also laughed. Suddenly, Yang Tian raised his hand and slashed. A red wind blade was slashed out from a blade. As soon as it left the blade, it split into 3 and rushed toward Ao Chu and the 2 black-armored people. In the face of Yang Tian's sudden attack, the 2 black-armored guards reflexively dodged to the sides. As for Ao Chu, when faced with Yang Tian's attack, his heart was strong, but his strength was not enough. Ao Chu, who had reformed his body again, was now at a lower realm than Yang Tian. At such a close distance, there was no way for him to dodge. The smile on his face froze in an instant. One of the wind blades from Yang Tian's attack passed through Ao Chu's body vertically. Yang Tian used his mind power. Although he split the red wind blade into 3, the most powerful one was the wind blade that slashed toward Ao Chu. In order to kill Ao Chu in one hit, not only did Yang Tian use his mind power, he also used the wonders of the snow slash. It was very sharp. Puffed. When the red wind blade passed through Ao Chu's body, it took more than 2 seconds before Ao Chu's body let out a spluttering sound. The 2 halves of Ao Chu's body were pushed apart by the pressure inside his body. They separated and fell to the ground stiffly. Boom! The little blue dragon that was lying on top of Yang Tian suddenly turned into a green dragon that was several meters long. It opened its mouth and spat out dragon flames at the two halves of Ao Chu's body that were still trembling. In an instant, Ao Chu's body was reduced to ashes. Yang Tian smiled coldly and said, "If I can't kill you the first time, then I'll kill you again. Yang Tian, please come with us. Our master has something to ask you." The two black armored guards did not care about Ao Chu's death. One of them did not even look at Ao Chu that had been reduced to ashes. He walked over and said to Yang Tian. Chapter 276. Why should I go with you? Yang Tian smiled. One of the black armored guards said, "My lord wants to see you and ask you some questions. He has no ill intentions towards you, at least not now. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given you such a big gift." Yang Tian understood that the big gift this guard was talking about was Ao Chu. What the guard said was rather honest. Yang Tian turned around and glanced at Seven Light Rain and the siblings, then nodded to the two guards. "All right, I'll go with you." "Brother Yang," Seven Light Rain said worriedly. Yang Tian smiled and said, "Don't worry, I'll be fine. When things are over, I'll look for you." At this moment, the two guards looked at each other. Then one of them said to Yang Tian, "They also want to go with us." "No." The moment the guard finished speaking, Yang Tian said in a deep voice. Obviously, these two guards wanted to use Seven Light Rain and the rest as hostages. The guard smiled and said, "Yang Tian, I know you're stronger than us, but you can't protect them alone." This was the truth. Yang Tian frowned. He never liked being threatened by others, but the actual situation was just as the guard said. If they resisted now, even with the little blue dragon, they wouldn't be able to protect Seven Light Rain and the rest. Seeing Yang Tian's unhappy look, the guard said, "Don't worry, we'll ensure their safety. In fact, it's very dangerous for them to stay here, because these two young women are quite good-looking." This guard was very eloquent, so Yang Tian could only nod and say, "All right, but if you dare to hurt them, I promise you'll pay the price." "Please." The guard didn't say anything else and only made an inviting gesture to Yang Tian. Immediately, a small spaceship flew over and landed near Yang Tian and the rest, then opened the cabin door. Yang Tian, Seven Light Rain, and the others quickly boarded the small spaceship. When Yang Tian saw Ao Chu, he knew that the two guards wanted to ask him about what had happened in the minor world. They also wanted to know about the death of the Star Quarry's owner, as well as the mysterious woman who was powerful to them. Yang Tian had nothing to hide from them, so he told them directly. As for what would happen next, Yang Tian could only take one step at a time. When the cabin door closed and the spaceship took off, Qi Guanghao looked at Yang Tian and said with guilt, "Brother Yang, we dragged you down." The brother Yang that Qi Guanghao called was also what Yang Tian told him to call him. Seeing Qi Guanghao's dejected look, Yang Tian smiled and said, "I don't think so, because you are all my friends. If you don't want something like this to happen again, you have to work hard and keep getting stronger." "Okay." After receiving Yang Tian's encouragement, Qi Guanghao nodded his head heavily. The speed of this small spaceship was very fast. After a few minutes, they arrived at the Star Quarry's manor and landed. After the cabin door of the spaceship opened, Yang Tian, the other three, and the little blue dragon were led to a large villa in the manor. When the siblings saw the luxurious decorations in the living room, their eyes widened in surprise. They had grown up in Lugushing and had never seen such gorgeous decorations in the living room. There were also sofa-like seats in the living room. Yang Tian sat down casually, feeling very comfortable. The nervous and reserved Seven Light Rain and the others also sat down one after another when they saw Yang Tian enjoying himself. After the four of them sat down, a young man with a cold face walked into the small living room. This person sized up Yang Tian, smiled, and said, "Thank you for your cooperation." As the young man spoke, he casually sat down on the sofa beside Yang Tian, less than 1 meter away. After the young man sat down, a beautiful woman in a tight silver-white uniform came in with drinks and various delicious fruits. She placed them on the table, bowed silently to the young man, and then left. Yang Tian saw a fruit that looked like an apple on the fruit plate. He casually took one and took a bite. Pooey, the fruit tasted bitter, and Yang Tian immediately spat it out. It was simply too disgusting. The young man only smiled, not caring that Yang Tian had dirted the floor of the living room. He took a similar fruit from the plate and slowly ate it. Also, thank you for the gift you gave me. Yang Tian smiled. The young man nodded. My name is Mi Shiqian. You should know why I invited you here. Yang Tian nodded and said, you should know the situation in that small world. There's a space in that very large sphere, and there's a very large palace inside. At this point, Yang Tian stopped. He had yet to throw away the fruit in his hand, but at this moment, the bitter taste in his mouth turned into a sweet taste. However, his tongue felt a little numb, which was also the reason why Yang Tian stopped. Fortunately, Yang Tian had the power of the dragon orb and quickly restored his tongue to normal. Yang Tian took another bite and slowly tasted it. This fruit is poisonous, Mi Shiqian suddenly said. I know, Yang Tian smiled, but it can't poison me to death. Seeing that Yang Tian was speaking clearly and did not seem to be poisoned, Mi Shiqian said, I also know the situation in there. I want to know the background of that woman. She was once the goddess of the superstar god temple. As for her name, I don't know. She has always been sealed in there. I'm sorry, but I accidentally found her and released her. Otherwise, the star mine owner would not have been killed by her. After Yang Tian finished speaking, a helpless expression appeared on his face. Hearing Yang Tian say this, the three siblings nervously sat up straight. Yang Tian's words were too honest. Was he not afraid of angering the star mine owner's subordinate? However, Mi Shiqian only smiled. He finished the fruit in a few bites and placed the core on the table. Then he stood up and said to Yang Tian, don't waste it. I hope to see you again in the future. After saying this, Mi Shiqian left the hall. What does he mean? Qi Guanghao asked in confusion. Yang Tian finished the poisonous fruit in a few bites and placed it on the table. He wiped his hands on the luxurious chair and stood up with a smile. He means that we can leave. We can leave? Qi Guanghao stood up and said in surprise. The three of them did not expect that things would go so smoothly. In Seven Light Rain and the others' impression, the subordinates of the Star Quarry's owner were all extremely vicious. It was impossible for them to leave so easily. Don't think too much about it. Let's leave before things change, Yang Tian said as he turned around and walked outside. Chapter 277. Town 001 was the closest to the star mine owner's manor, so it wasn't chaotic and everything was in order. When Yang Tian and Seven Light Rain left the star mine owner's manor, they headed to the nearby Town 01 under Seven Light Rain's suggestion. The armored soldiers surrounding the manor didn't pay any attention to Yang Tian and Seven Light Rain. These soldiers had naturally received instructions from their superiors and allowed Yang Tian and Seven Light Rain to leave. The process went smoothly, but Yang Tian felt that Mi Shiqian's reaction was a little strange. Town 01 was called a small town, but it was similar to a small city on Earth. The houses in the town were more beautiful and taller than those in Town 703. The layout of the houses in the town was also more reasonable. It was impossible for a habitable planet to be completely isolated from the outside world. There was a need for commercial activities. Even if the ruler didn't allow the commoners to engage in frequent commercial activities, he still needed to do so. Next to Town 01 was a large spaceship landing site. Even though the entire planet was in chaos, all kinds of spaceships transporting materials would take off and land every once in a while. One could also buy an interstellar spaceship ticket and leave this place. Of course, the price of a spaceship ticket was also very expensive. Yang Tan, who had obtained a large amount of star crystals, naturally hoped to buy a spaceship instead of leaving this place directly. He had heard from Seven Light Rain that the spaceships here were twice as expensive as those outside. Yang Tian didn't care at all. On one hand, it was because he was somewhat impatient. On the other hand, if he took Seven Light Rain and Seven Light Rain away from this planet, regardless of whether he bought a spaceship ticket or teleported directly, the total price would be enough to buy a small spaceship. The star mine owners' control over this planet was really abnormal. If the rulers of those cities on Earth dared to act so recklessly, they would have been overthrown long ago. The star crystals you obtained need to be exchanged first. If it's inconvenient to carry them around, you can go to the Universe Bank branch and exchange the star crystals for crystal cards. It's easier to carry them around. If you have enough storage space, you can also exchange them for standard volume star crystals, 7 Light Rain said, after entering Town 01 and knowing Yang Tian's plan. Even now, the 7 Light Rain siblings were still a little worried. They didn't want to stay on this planet any longer and had pinned all their hopes on Yang Tian. Yang Tian knew how 7 Light Rain and the others were feeling, but he didn't say anything. They would naturally understand when the time came. Coming to this planet and encountering the 7 Light Rain was also a kind of fate. Even if they left Lugu planet and never met again, Yang Tian would still do his best to help them. Although 7 Light Rain had never been to Town 01 before, she was more familiar with the planet than Yang Tian. Under her guidance, the four of them quickly arrived at the Universe Bank branch. It was a 10-story building that looked very imposing. This was just like the major bank buildings on Earth. They were rich. Even if it was a waste of resources, the construction would be eye-catching and memorable. To put it bluntly, this was also a means of publicity to show the huge financial resources of the bank and reassure the depositors. After entering the Universe Bank, the scene that appeared in front of Yang Tian gave him a very modern feeling. On an alien planet, Yang Tian finally saw something created by technology. In the hall, there were many windows. Inside each window, there were robots operating. Outside the windows, there was a sign that said the business of the window was handled. The people standing outside the window handling the business had an operation panel floating beside them. They could operate according to their needs. Inside the window, there are also robots conversing with people. At the top of the hall, there was a bright light source. The light that shone down was very similar to the color of the stars. Of course, between these light sources, there were definitely surveillance devices, such as cameras and even powerful weapons. The ground was soft and very neatly built green grass. In fact, this was simulated. Although Yang Tian felt that the ground was soft when he walked, he could see his feet passing through the green grass. There were many things that highlighted the power of technology. In the hall, there were also many people waiting to do business. Opposite each business window, there were rows of seats for people to sit and wait. When it was time for the next business, the seat would automatically move forward and move to the front of the window. After the death of the star mine owner, Lugu planet was in chaos. Many people wanted to leave here. There were no empty seats in the hall. There were also some people standing at the side, holding on to their jars, waiting anxiously. Although he was already learning the universal language, Yang Tian still couldn't recognize all these words. However, 7 Light Rain and her siblings could understand them. 7 Light Rain pulled Yang Tian directly to an empty window. After arriving at the window, 7 Light Rain said to the humanoid robot inside, "We want to exchange for standard volume of star crystals. The amount must be above 20,000. The robot inside immediately opened a special door beside the window and let Yang Tian and the rest in. This window should be the VIP window, Yang Tian thought. The following process was very simple. Yang Tian and the rest were brought to a clean, quiet room. A real human staff member walked in. Under the staff member's request, Yang Tian took out a portion of the star crystals. After weighing these star crystals and deducting 1,000th of the handling fee, Yang Tian received more than 100,000 star crystals of standard volume. As for the star crystals that Yang Tian took out, they were put into the bank storage tool by the staff member. During this process, 7 Light Rain and her siblings all widened their eyes when they saw Yang Tian take out so many star crystals. They hadn't even seen 10,000 star crystals piled up together, let alone 100,000 star crystals piled up in boxes. At this moment, 7 Light Rain thought of the star crystals she forgot in the store and regretted it even more. The three of them were surprised, but not shocked. It would be strange if an expert like Yang Tian didn't have a large amount of star crystals on him. After exchanging for the star crystals, Yang Tian put the 100,000 star crystals into his storage bracelet. With 1,000 of the handling fee, he received more than 1,000 star crystals. After leaving the Universe Bank building, Yang Tian muttered, "It's really too shady." Seeing that Yang Tian had so many star crystals, 7 light rain and the rest were relieved. Hearing Yang Tian's muttering, 7 light rain laughed and said, "The prices on this planet are very high. The Universe Bank branch here has to hand over a portion of the profits to the star mine owner." Hearing 7 light rain's words, Yang Tian understood that in the universe, the ruler who controlled a large number of habitable planets was the richest. Just like the star mine owner, he could sit at home and continuously obtain large amounts of star crystals. Chapter 278. There were more shops in Town 01 than in Town 703, and the shops were also bigger. Opposite the Universe Bank, there was a shop that specialized in selling spaceships. This shop was much more advanced than the one 7 Light Rain had. Here, not only were there models of spaceships, but there were also 3D projections for viewing. When Yang Tian walked into the shop, he saw 3 people choosing spaceships. 2 of them were a man and a woman, and they looked like a very rich couple. The other person was a burly man who was dressed very simply and had a knife at his side. 2 of the shop assistants were explaining the parameters of spaceships to the 3 of them. In front of the 3 of them was a 3D projection, which clearly and realistically showed the scene of a spaceship floating in space. The shop was very spacious, and it was filled with transparent counters. The counters were all spaceship models. After Yang Tian glanced around the shop, he was attracted by the spaceship models in the transparent counters. Yang Tian leaned against the counters and looked at the models one by one. Finally, he saw a spaceship that he was satisfied with. This spaceship was made up of 2 triangular bodies. The front half was triangular, and the rear half was a large triangle. The whole body was flat. When Yang Tian stopped beside the counter, a female shop assistant walked over and smiled at Yang Tian. "Sir, do you want to buy this spaceship?" Sir was a form of address in the universe. It could be a form of address from a subordinate to a superior, or it could also be a form of address from a junior to a senior. It also had a similar meaning to Mr. on Earth. Faced with the shop assistant's inquiry, Yang Tian nodded. The young and beautiful shop assistant immediately took out a spaceship model from the counter and handed it to Yang Tian. Yang Tian held the spaceship model in his hand and looked at it with great interest. The shop assistant smiled and explained the parameters of the spaceship. Finally, she took out a mobile projection device. This projector was a small silver-white ring, and it was covered with many small dots that projected light. After activating this 3D projector, the dots on it lit up, and a clear 3D image was displayed more than 10 centimeters above the projector. The projected spaceship floated in space and rotated slowly, allowing Yang Tian to clearly see the outline of the entire spaceship. After listening to the female employee's explanation, Yang Tian had a rough understanding of the spaceship's data and capabilities. This was a small to medium-sized spaceship. In terms of the length units used by humans on Earth, it was about 50 meters long and 30 meters wide at its widest part. In 3 seconds, he would be able to enter the space jump state. If a special communication device was installed, it would be able to maintain communication with the outside world during the space jump. In addition to these, the spaceship also carried a weapon system and had an intermediate defensive shield. "What do you think of the spaceship?" Yang Tian casually asked 7 Light Rain and the others after the female shop assistant finished her introduction. "This spaceship is not bad." Rainbow, who didn't speak much, said, "But it has a weakness. The company that produced this ship, Tyrannical Corporation, uses an old version of the control system. It can't display the full capabilities of the ship. If only the operating system was upgraded." "That's quite professional." Yang Tian looked at Rainbow in surprise, causing the girl to lower her head shyly. She said in a voice as soft as a mosquito, "When I'm free, I like to look at these things. I can remember a lot of the characteristics of spaceships." "Is that so?" Yang Tian turned around and asked the female shop assistant. When the female shop assistant introduced the spaceship, she didn't mention this problem. Actually, most people who came to buy spaceships didn't care about this problem. This was a strange universe. On one hand, technology was advanced, and on the other hand, there were powerful cultivators. Powerful cultivators in the universe could do things that technology couldn't. Take traveling in the universe as an example. A powerful cultivator could fly faster than the fastest spaceship. Those who could afford spaceships were mostly powerful cultivators and didn't rely on spaceships. Naturally, they would overlook this problem. The female shop assistant found it difficult to answer. Rainbow was right. The control system of this spaceship hadn't been upgraded. I want the upgraded version. Yang Tian didn't want to make things difficult for the female shop assistant and said directly. However, the female shop assistant said, there is an upgraded version, but the price is 10% more expensive. It didn't matter if it was a little more expensive as long as the spaceship's performance was good. Yang Tian didn't have high requirements for this, because he was a cultivator in the universe. If he was in a hurry, he could just use teleportation later. Yang Tian was about to agree when Rainbow said, you're cheating. Although the Star Mine owner charges the highest price, it doesn't include the system program. Also, a spaceship should be upgraded for free. There's no reason to add more money. I'll ask the higher-ups for instructions. They'll give you a reply soon. After saying that, the female shop assistant left quickly. Yang Tian could not help but look at the female shop assistant's beautiful figure as she walked. Her posture was as graceful as an ordinary woman on Earth. Yang Tian could not help but look at her feet. It turned out that the female shop assistant was not wearing high heels. Yang Tian then remembered that ever since he left Earth, the women he saw didn't wear high heels. He understood that this was a unique invention of Earth's humans. Other than high heels, they didn't even seem to have stockings. At most, they only wore tight pants. Yang Tian turned around, looked at Rainbow Rain, and asked, if I have an invention that can make a woman walk with more flavor, can I make money with this? Yang Tian was just asking casually. Unexpectedly, Rainbow Rain nodded and said, of course, you can make a lot of money. The prerequisite is that you have to apply for protection from the Universe Business Alliance. So it's a patent. Yang Tian thought. Yang Tian thought for a while, got closer to Rainbow Rain, and whispered a few words in her ear. So simple. I haven't tried it before. Rainbow Rain was a little surprised after hearing Yang Tian's words. You can give it a try. Maybe someone has already applied for protection. Yang Tian said. The universe was very big and there were many people. Who could guarantee that no one had invented and used such a simple thing? And Rainbow Rain nodded. There was a hint of excitement in her eyes. If she could make enough money in the future, she wouldn't have to trouble Yang Tian anymore. At this time, the female shop assistant finally walked out and smiled at Yang Tian. Your request is very reasonable. The higher-ups have agreed. Yang Tian smiled. The price of his spaceship was 30,000 star crystals. After deducting 10%, it would be 3,000 star crystals. 3,000 star crystals was a small amount to the current Yang Tian, but to Rainbow Rain and the others, it was a huge sum. Chapter 279. After paying 30,000 star crystals, Yang Tian was led to the back of the shop by the female employee. The few of them sat in a small car that could hover. The car was very fast. After a few minutes, they arrived at a spacious parking lot outside the town. Once they got out of the car, Yang Tian's attention was attracted by a spaceship. This spaceship was the one he had bought for 30,000 star crystals. The spaceship did not have a name. Only the person who owned it had the right to name it. Looking at the spaceship, Yang Tian smiled and said, "It's completely black. Let's call it Black Dragon Spaceship." Yang Tian was very happy because he had finally realized his dream of owning a spaceship. If only he could bring such advanced technology back to Earth. It would allow the humans on Earth to live more comfortably. Yang Tian thought to himself. At this time, Earth was not suitable to appear in the star map of the universe. The humans on Earth were still too weak. A weak race would only end up being enslaved. Moreover, even if Yang Tian wanted to return to Earth, it would be very troublesome. This was because the teleportation formation disk to Earth had been changed by the masked man in black into a one-way teleportation, unless he knew the coordinates of Earth on the star map. However, only the Superstellar Divinity Temple had this kind of information. After leaving Earth, Yang Tian had indirectly learned a lot of information. When Yang Tian arrived, the shop that sold the spaceship unlocked the spaceship. The hatch opened, and Yang Tian and the other three boarded the spaceship with the female employee. Under the guidance of the female employee, they went straight to the cockpit. The control system of the spaceship was an intelligent system. Most of the operations only required voice control. The first step was to bind Yang Tian's identity. From then on, unless the control system of the spaceship was deleted, Yang Tian would have the highest authority in the spaceship. Of course, Yang Tian could also entrust others to control the spaceship for him. After the binding was completed, the female employee brought Yang Tian and the others to look at the other parts of the spaceship. For example, the resting cabin, medical cabin, storage room, etc. Although it is a small spaceship, the interior space of the spaceship is very wide and can accommodate hundreds of people. What made Yang Tian satisfied was that the energy source of this spaceship was actually stellar crystals. Yang Tian learned from the saleswoman that the system used to extract the energy from the star crystal was a magical rune technology. Then, under the guidance of the salesgirl, Yang Tian put 100 pieces of star crystals into the energy reactor. After explaining how to operate the spaceship, the female shop assistant left. The excited Yang Tian immediately returned to the cockpit with 7 Light Rain and the others. System start. Close the hatch. After sitting in the main pilot's seat, Yang Tian immediately started operating according to the operating procedure. Under the control of the AI program, Yang Tian controlled the spaceship to fly slowly to a height of 100 meters. He then ordered the spaceship to accelerate and fly towards the outer space of Lego Planet. The speed of the spaceship was very fast. It only took a few minutes to get out of the gravitational range of Lego Planet. Outside the planet, the starry sky looked even more beautiful. Yang Tian looked out of the window and was mesmerized for a while. It took a long time before he withdrew his gaze. Where should he go next? Yang Tian thought for a while and suddenly remembered that when the powerful former goddess left, she once told him that he could go to Ketla Planet. On that planet, there was a superstar academy. Yang Tian felt that going to that planet was a good idea. Since there was a superstar academy, then the Superstar Divinity Temple should not be far away. He immediately ordered the spaceship's AI control system to bring up the star map. Ketla Planet was naturally on the star map. The Superstar Divinity Temple was not on the star map because it was not a planet. This made Yang Tian a little disappointed. Under the curious gaze of the siblings and the little blue dragon, Yang Tian tapped on the Ketla Planet and a map of the spaceship's route appeared. After calculation, it would take about half a month. If they used the teleportation method, it would probably take less than a day. Yang Tian, who was on a spaceship for the first time, agreed to the plan. Long-distance flights were very boring. For most cultivators in the universe, they liked to use the teleportation method because it saved time. Yang Tian, of course, also wanted to reach Ketla Planet as soon as possible and see Qin Fei. However, he also considered that he would need some time to organize himself and use the time to absorb the energy of the star crystals to increase his strength. When the spaceship started to fly towards Ketla Planet, Yang Tian handed the control of the spaceship to Rainbow. This young girl was very talented in this area. Ever since she boarded the spaceship, she sat in the co-pilot seat of the spaceship and flipped through the operating instructions. Yang Tian estimated that Rainbow's ability to operate the spaceship was much better than his. After letting Rainbow take control of the spaceship, Yang Tian brought the little blue dragon into one of the resting cabins of the spaceship and closed the cabin door to begin his seclusion. Yang Tian's current physical state was still at the planetary state Star-Lord state. He had 3 types of energy in his body. He could completely control the dragon orb power and mental force. However, Yang Tian didn't understand the mysterious power of bloodline power. Although he couldn't control it, it truly came from his body. It was the energy contained in the countless cells in his body. Yang Tian didn't need to think to know that if he was like the star mine owner in Ao Chu, he would have to rely on this bloodline power to reform his body, even if only a part of it was left. Last time, it was this power that allowed his cells to regenerate in that huge red ball. After closing the resting cabin, Yang Tian laid on the bed and used his hands as a pillow as he started to think. Other people like to cultivate while sitting cross-legged, but Yang Tian liked this comfortable position. After closing his eyes, Yang Tian began to focus all of his attention on his body. After a while, Yang Tian could clearly feel the internal activities of his organs. His heart was beating and pumping blood. Blood flowed through his body and delivered energy to all of his organs. The cells in his body seemed to be dividing and eliminating the dead cells. As Yang Tian focused more and more, his observation of his body became clearer and clearer. Finally, Yang Tian's consciousness entered one of the cells in his body. Now, a strange scene appeared in his mind. A huge cell with a gray core was floating in front of him. There were many small tube-shaped tissues on the surface of the cell. What Yang Tian paid attention to wasn't the structure of this cell. Instead, in the middle of this cell nucleus, he saw a thread of energy that was full of vitality and constantly flowing. This thread of energy was very familiar to Yang Tian. Yang Tian didn't need to think to know that this was the so-called bloodline power. If he couldn't control a large amount of bloodline power, then what about this thread? Yang Tian was slightly excited and began to try. Chapter 280. Yang Tian gathered his thoughts and entered the cell's nucleus. Then, he wrapped his thoughts around the bloodline power. What made Yang Tian happy was that the bloodline power was very obedient. It did not resist at all. Instead, it was very gentle. Then, Yang Tian controlled the bloodline power to withdraw from the cell. A strange thing happened. When the cell lost the power of the bloodline, it suddenly withered. The withered cell was like a withered leaf on a tree. It suddenly slid down and disappeared from Yang Tian's sight. At this moment, a cell next to it suddenly split and filled the gap left by the cell's disappearance. This process was the cell's death and division. Of course, the cell division speed in Yang Tian's body was far beyond that of an ordinary person. Compared to an ordinary person, Yang Tian's body had actually reached a new level. Yang Tian saw the whole process clearly. It was an eye-opener for him. At this moment, Yang Tian's thoughts were still wrapped around the bloodline power. When Yang Tian relaxed his attention, the bloodline power quickly dissipated. Yang Tian had already realized that this kind of energy was like a person's body and soul to the cell. If the soul was extracted, the body would not be able to survive. Of course, this was just a metaphor. Yang Tian was not very sure whether a person had a soul or not. Since he could not extract it, what about separating it? Yang Tian tried again. This time, Yang Tian chose a cell at random and entered it with his thoughts. This time, Yang Tian used his thoughts to control the bloodline power and split it into two. One of them remained in the cell, while the other was extracted by him. As Yang Tian expected, this time the cell did not wither. After half of the bloodline power was extracted, the bloodline power in the cell suddenly became stronger. Although it was not very obvious, it still surprised Yang Tian. At this time, the bloodline power that was wrapped in his mind dissipated like last time after the binding of his mind disappeared. Once again, Yang Tian used his mind to control the bloodline power in the cell nucleus and split it in half. The bloodline power in the cell also grew a little stronger. Yang Tian extracted the bloodline power again and again, and the cell nucleus became stronger each time. After Yang Tian tried about 8 times, the cell finally withered. After these attempts, Yang Tian realized that the bloodline power in his body cells could not grow indefinitely. There was always a limit. He also knew that the bloodline power that was extracted from the cells would dissipate immediately when he lost control of his thoughts. Yang Tian thought again. He felt that the method just now was not right. What if he did not extract this energy, but let it continue to grow? Yang Tian changed his perspective. In addition to the bloodline power, he also had the power of the Dragon Ball and mental power. If he used mental power and the dragon's power to supplement the bloodline power, at the thought of this, Yang Tian immediately took action. First of all, he used mental power. This was because mental power was a very wonderful power that could travel through time and space. With a thought, Yang Tian opened the world of mental power. A dragon formed by mental power rushed out of the spiritual world and arrived around the cell that Yang Tian's thoughts were focused on. Under Yang Tian's control, this mental power drilled into the cell nucleus and entangled with the bloodline power. At this moment, Yang Tian released his control of this mental power. A wonderful thing happened. In this microscopic world, Yangming's mental power slowly weakened, while his blood meridian power gradually grew stronger. Seeing this, Yang Tian knew that he had succeeded. In the past, when he used his power, whether it was the dragon's power or mental power flowing in his body, they did not really enter the cell nucleus. Or perhaps, suddenly, Yang Tian thought of another situation. That was, the bloodline power in the cell nucleus of his body did not appear substantially before, but only recently. To put it bluntly, it was awakening. Thinking of this, Yang Tian finally vaguely understood. After testing his thoughts, Yang Tian woke himself up. Then, he controlled the power of the Dragon Ball in the Dragon Ball world and gathered it on his right hand, turning it into a dragon claw. Yang Tian was already very familiar with this process. It took less than a minute. After that, Yang Tian focused his mind on his right arm. Soon, Yang Tian discovered that although the power of the Dragon Ball had changed the cells in his arm, this change only happened on the surface of the cells. The power of the Dragon Ball did not penetrate deep into the cell nucleus. If the power of the Dragon Ball, mental power, and bloodline were fused together, what would happen? This strange idea suddenly appeared in Yang Tian's mind. Then, he began the experiment again. After dispersing the dragon's power on his arm, his right hand returned to its original shape. Opening his right hand, Yang Tian focused his mind on his right palm. As his mind became more and more focused, a cell in his palm appeared in Yang Tian's mind. Yang Tian used his mental power and entered the cell nucleus. Then, he controlled the power of the Dragon Ball and came to the surface of the cell. At this time, Yang Tian was doing two things at once. He had to control his mental power and the power of the Dragon Ball at the same time. In the cell nucleus, when his mental power entered the cell, it quickly fused with the bloodline power in the cell, immediately making the bloodline power stronger. However, the power of the Dragon Ball was different. The bloodline power in the cell nucleus actually repelled the power of the Dragon Ball and did not want to let it enter the cell nucleus. In this case, the cell nucleus could be compared to a room. The bloodline power was equivalent to the master of this room, and the power of the Dragon Ball was like a stranger. How could he let the power of the Dragon Ball enter the cell nucleus? Tian thought about it again. Not long after, Yang Tian finally had an idea. Then, he began to follow his idea and let his mental power wrap around a trace of the power of the Dragon Ball and slowly enter the cell nucleus. As expected, the bloodline power in the cell nucleus did not reject him anymore. Then Tian dispersed the mental power wrapped around the surface of the power of the Dragon Ball. At this time, in Yang Tian's perception, the bloodline power was sparkling and translucent. The mental power was invisible, and the power of the Dragon Ball carried a faint 9-colored color. Although the three powers were only a small trace, in Yang Tian's perception, the process of fusing produced a very strong rejection reaction. Yang Tian used his mind to forcefully control the three powers and did not let them separate. In fact, at this time, Yang Tian did not know what the result would be. Fuse! Fuse! Yang Tian kept repeating these two words in his mind. He was looking forward to it. This situation was like two magnets. When they were alone, they would repel each other if they were of the same level. However, When they were fused together with a powerful force, they would become a whole magnet. Yang Tian wanted to use his mind to suppress these three powers and make them more and more condensed until they finally fused into one. Time flew by quickly in Yang Tian's vision. After an unknown amount of time, the three powers finally condensed into a point. This point was just like the Dragon Ball in the Dragon Ball world. When this point was formed, suddenly something unexpected happened to Yang Tian. Chapter 281. As soon as this was formed, Yang Tian felt that the cell nucleus had also undergone some changes. Furthermore, this was like a lamp that suddenly lit up and emitted a 9-colored light. This light wasn't very bright, but it gave Yang Tian a very gentle feeling. After the cell nucleus possessed this power, Yang Tian felt that the entire cell was emitting a strong vitality. At the same time, Yang Tian could also feel that this cell could be controlled by his thoughts. If the original cell was a house, Yang Tian only had the right to use it, but he didn't have the right to modify it. However, not only did Yang Tian have the right to use it, but he also had the right to modify it. Under the control of Yang Tian's thoughts, this cell started to split. One split into two, two split into four. Every cell had its own independent space. The cells that split naturally squeezed out the other cells. Among these new cells that had been split, there was actually a new power that Yang Tian had created by fusing the three types of power. Very quickly, the nucleus of every cell that had been split emitted a faint halo. At the same time, the palms of the 2 days also emitted a 9-colored light. Yang Tian felt that this process of splitting was like being reborn. It was especially magical. Unknowingly, Yang Tian's entire palm was occupied by the newly split cells. Yang Tian's entire palm was now surrounded by a faint halo. It looked very magical. However, there was a limit to this kind of splitting. This was because when a cell split into two, the energy in the cell would only be half of the original. When it split again, it would become a quarter, an eighth. In the end, this power completely disappeared. This also meant that the number of cell divisions had reached its limit. When he felt a strong resistance while controlling the cell division, he woke up. He opened his eyes and stared at his right palm in a daze. Regardless of whether it was the skin, the muscle cells, or the bones, they were all formed by the newly divided cells. Yang Tian didn't need to think to know that these newly divided cells, which were filled with new power, were of higher quality than the original cells. If they weren't on the spaceship, both of them would have slapped the ground to see if this hand had become stronger. If a cell that was split from a cell could occupy the entire palm, then if he did the same thing as before and created primitive cells with strange powers in every part of his body, would he be able to make his entire body like his right palm? However, Yang Tian also vaguely felt that the cells formed in this way could not last long because every cell had lost the ability to divide. Yang Tian's right palm emitted a faint halo. This was because each of the cells and cell nuclei that made up his palm contained a special energy formed by the fusion of the three forces. This situation did not last long. After a few minutes, his right palm was replaced by normal cells and returned to its original color. This was because every cell had its own lifespan and would die when it was up, or if it lost the replenishment of energy, it would also wither and be replaced by new cells. Next, Yang Tian began to study this new power formed after the fusion of the three forces. During the transformation and recovery of his palm, just now, Yang Tian had a new understanding of life. This understanding? However, this understanding could not be described with words. Soon, the strange power formed by the fusion of the three forces was once again produced in the cell nucleus selected by Yang Tian. This time, Yang Tian wanted to make this power extremely powerful. When a light spot appeared in the cell nucleus again, Yang Tian continued to transfer his mental power and the power of the Dragon Ball to this light spot. Soon, something amazing happened again. When this power was strong enough, the cell nucleus could not accommodate it and passed it on to the cells next to it. The cells next to it could not accommodate it and spread to the surrounding cells. With the continuous input of power, the cells in Yang Tian's body were lit up one by one. This exponential expansion speed soon covered Yang Tian's entire body. At this time, looking from the outside, Yang Tian's entire body was emitting a 9-colored halo. At the same time, a strange energy fluctuation was emitted from Yang Tian's body. The little blue dragon, who was resting with his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Yang Tian in surprise. After about 10 minutes, Yang Tian suddenly opened his eyes, picked up the knife beside him, and cut his wrist. A deep wound appeared on Yang Tian's wrist, and a large amount of blood gushed out. Under Yang Tian's control, the cells at the wound began to divide rapidly. In less than a minute, the bleeding wound was healed and no scars could be seen. This result was already within Yang Tian's expectations and did not find it strange. At this time, he stared at the pool of blood on the ground. The fresh blood also emitted a faint glow because the blood cells also contained the same strange energy. Under Yang Tian's will, these blood cells began to divide rapidly. At this time, Yang Tian had a bold idea. Could he make his blood form an organ? For example, one of his hands or something. Under the control of his mind, the blood on the ground actually moved. Not long after, it condensed together. To Yang Tian's disappointment, this was all he could do. To make these cells divide, grow again, and form new organs and tissues with Yang Tian's current state, he felt powerless. Yang Tian understood that this was because his state had not reached that level yet. However, it would be soon. The Star Mind Master was a star-grade powerhouse. After being defeated by that female powerhouse, he had been reborn several times. Then, when he was a star-grade powerhouse, this ability would definitely appear. Since he could not do it, Yang Tian gave up on the idea just now and turned his attention to the new power formed by the fusion of the 3 types of power. This time, Yang Tian used his will to distribute it all over his body and carefully felt it. Then he sent out his will to his entire body. In an instant, a portion of the strange energy was separated from all the cells in his body. Yang Tian controlled this energy and condensed it in the center of his right hand. Soon, a 5-color energy ball was formed on his palm, emitting intense light. As soon as this energy ball appeared, it emitted a powerful energy wave. As the energy grew stronger, the ball also became brighter and the energy wave emitted became stronger. Even Yang Tian, who created this energy ball, felt that the destructive power of this energy was especially strong. It could be described with the word terrifying. Suddenly, a notification sounded in the resting cabin. Detected energy waves inside the spaceship. It may affect the spaceship. Stop space, jump flying in 3 minutes. Hearing this, Yang Tian's eyes widened. Chapter 282. At this moment, Yang Tian could clearly feel that the spaceship was decelerating. The glowing energy sphere in his hand suddenly expanded at a rapid speed due to the relaxation of his will. This time, the energy sphere emitted even more intense energy waves. Beep, beep, beep. Immediately after, the spaceship's alarm sounded. Yang Tian was shocked and immediately shifted his attention to the energy sphere in his hand. If this thing exploded and the spaceship was destroyed, not only Seven Light Rain and the others, but even Yang Tian himself might be finished. Under the control of Yang Tian's will, the energy sphere began to shrink slowly. At the same time, Yang Tian also used his body to absorb this energy. After being absorbed by Yang Tian's body, the energy sphere became smaller and soon disappeared. At this moment, Yang Tian heaved a sigh of relief. He almost got burned by playing with fire. The energy ball formed from this unique energy gave Yang Tian a strong feeling that the destructive power of this energy was extremely strong. Although he had not tested it, Yang Tian trusted his intuition. Dong, dong, dong. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. As the spaceship suddenly stopped, and the alarm sounded. 7 light rain, and the others were a little nervous. They did not understand what was going on, so they quickly came to find Yang Tian. "Open the door," Yang Tian said indifferently. With a chi sound, the metal door of the resting cabin opened. The one who knocked on the door was Seven Light Hao. After seeing Yang Tian, Seven Light Hao said nervously, "Brother Yang, the spaceship has stopped, and there's an alarm." Yang Tian smiled and said, "It's fine. I made a little noise just now. Let Rainbow control the spaceship and continue flying." "Oh," Seven Light Hao looked at Yang Tian curiously, nodded, and turned to leave. After Seven Light Hao left, Yang Tian shook his head. This spaceship was really not a place to cultivate. When Yang Tian retrieved the energy ball, the spaceship's alarm was deactivated. Rainbow controlled the spaceship to continue flying. In the next few days, Yang Tian didn't study the strange energy formed by the fusion of the 3 energies in his body. Instead, he started to absorb large amounts of star crystals to strengthen the Dragon Ball's power and mental power. The flight time calculated by the spaceship was very accurate. After exactly half a month, it stopped and floated near a huge planet. Yang Tian's Black Dragon spaceship was still thousands of kilometers away from the atmosphere of this planet. Various spaceships of different sizes and shapes were flying slowly in the periphery of this planet. Around this planet were 4 huge spaceports for spaceships. Looking at this huge planet on the screen of the spaceship, Yang Tian felt very excited because he knew that after arriving here, he would be very close to Qin Fei. This planet was the Ketla star. Ketla star was twice the size of Earth. From outer space, it looked like a light blue planet. It was very similar to Earth and had an ocean. The land was full of green plants, and the ocean was also blue. The difference was that other than the size of the planet, the land took up more than half of the planet's surface area. "Brother Yang Tian, are we going down?" Rainbow looked at the Ketla star outside the window and turned her head to ask Yang Tian. Rainbow called Yang Tian Brother Yang like Seven Light Hao. Yang Tian nodded. In this half a month, Rainbow knew this spaceship like the back of her hand. In terms of controlling this spaceship, Yang Tian couldn't compare to her. Rainbow didn't use voice control to control the spaceship. After getting Yang Tian's permission, she kept pressing on the control panel. After a while, she contacted the nearest spaceport. Rainbow sent out a request to stop the spaceship. The other party immediately replied, and Rainbow immediately activated the autopilot. It was worth mentioning that spaceships were not allowed to land on Ketla star, even small spaceships. Under the autopilot, the spaceship slowly approached the nearest spaceport. Ketla star spaceport was equivalent to a giant space fortress. It was very, very big. Soon, the spaceport outside the window completely covered Yang Tian's line of sight. This feeling was like the spaceship entering a planet. Soon, the spaceship shook and then stopped moving. Rainbow turned around and said to Yang Tian, "Brother Yang, the spaceship has stopped." Yang Tian nodded and said, "Then let's go out." The place where the spaceship stopped was quickly sealed. Soon, the entire space was filled with air. Yang Tian opened the door of the spaceship and walked down the gangway. After paying 1,000 star crystals, Yang Tian and the other 3 safely landed on Ketla star through the spaceport's dedicated lander. After leaving the landing station, Yang Tian looked up and smiled happily. This was the planet that he had imagined. It was surrounded by bright, tall buildings that towered into the sky. In between these tall buildings, there was a wide road. Countless small aircrafts flew close to the road at an extremely fast speed. The air was very fresh. Although they were surrounded by tall buildings, it was as if they were in a jungle. There were many pedestrians on both sides of the wide road. They walked slowly, as if they were taking a stroll. It was very leisurely. Seeing such a scene, Rainbow Rain and her siblings were like Yang Tian. Their eyes were filled with amazement. To them, such a world was very novel. There were many pedestrians on both sides of the road. Similarly, Yang Tian also saw some people who looked strange to him. It was just like on Lega's star. The people here all wore brighter clothes, and their expressions were more relaxed. Yang Tian followed the road and randomly chose a direction and walked forward. As the four of them walked, they looked around curiously. When others saw them, they knew that they were bumpkins who had just arrived on this planet. When some people walked past Yang Tian and the others, they curled their lips in disdain. Of course, Yang Tian saw the expressions on these people's faces. However, he didn't care. Yang Tian didn't find many powerful people here. The density of cultivators on this planet couldn't be compared to Lego's star. After walking for a while, Yang Tian stopped and turned around to look at Rainbow Rain. "What's wrong?" Rainbow Rain asked. Yang Tian smiled and asked, "What do you think of living on such a planet?" "This, of course, it's great." Rainbow Rain was stunned for a moment before she said happily. Yang Tian nodded. It was good that Rainbow Rain was satisfied. However, it would cost a lot to settle them down on this planet. At this moment, a young man walked towards Yang Tian and the others. Under Yang Tian's gaze, this person came directly in front of Yang Tian and asked, "Excuse me, did you just arrive on this planet? Do you need an intelligent navigation device? With such a device, no matter where you go on this planet, you won't have to worry about getting lost. If you want to find a place, you will be able to find it immediately." This kind of tool was exactly what Yang Tian needed. He nodded while thinking that this young man was quite good at doing business. Chapter 283. Seeing that Yang Tian was interested, the salesman took out a device that looked like a wristwatch from his bag and showed it to Yang Tian. The device used an intelligent operating system that was completely voice-controlled, so it was very easy to operate. Yang Tian quickly understood how to operate it. In fact, humans on Earth had created similar devices, but the system was not as advanced. Yang Tian was very satisfied and asked for the price. A smart device like this only cost 10 star crystals, which was not expensive for Yang Tian. After seeing the function of the device, Yang Tian was more willing to call it an intelligent auxiliary device instead of an intelligent navigation device. Yang Tian spent 40 star crystals to buy 4 of these devices. 7 Light Rain, 7 Light Rain, and 7 Light How each got one. 7 Light Rain and the others were very happy with the intelligent auxiliary device. After the transaction was completed, the salesman took the star crystals and quickly left. He seemed to be in a hurry. Yang Tian turned around and saw a few people walking over. These people were the same as Yang Tian and the others. It was obvious that they had just arrived on this planet. It seemed that the salesman was not willing to let go of any customers. Yang Tian smiled and turned on the intelligent auxiliary device, which immediately projected a blue light. In the blue light was a semi-transparent floor plan that looked like a menu. He randomly tapped on one of the items, and the intelligent auxiliary device issued a notification. This was convenient. Yang Tian did not understand words, but he could understand the notification language. While Yang Tian was operating the device, 7 Light Rain and the others were also operating the intelligent auxiliary device in their hands curiously. Their eyes were full of curiosity. Soon, Yang Tian used the intelligent auxiliary device to find a car. It was a driverless car, and its shape was similar to a car made by humans on Earth. It seemed that mathematics was indeed the universal language. The shape of a car that was designed using mathematical principles was similar even to planets in the universe. The city that Yang Tian and the others were in, if translated into Chinese from Earth, was called Kai City. After the 4 of them got into the car, Yang Tian said to the intelligent driving system in the car, "Let's go to the Kai City management office." The car immediately started moving. It stuck close to the ground and sped along. This should be what humans called a maglev car. A few minutes later, the car stopped. They had arrived at the city's management office. Yang Tian paid a piece of star gold. Actually, Yang Tian didn't need that much because he didn't have a crystal card from the Universe Bank. If he wanted a crystal card, he would only need 1/10 of a star crystal. Yang Tian came to the management office to register and get something similar to an ID card. This way, it would be more convenient to do things on Ketla. This was also what Yang Tian had just seen on the intelligent auxiliary device. In the management office's intelligent registration window, Yang Tian said his name, age, and some other basic information and received a green crystal card. Looking at the rectangular green card in his hand, Yang Tian couldn't help but smile. This was the so-called green card. Registration also required payment. Yang Tian paid another 40 star crystals to get a green card for 7 light rain and the others. With this card, 7 light rain and the others could stay on this planet for a long time. The universe was huge and there were many people moving around. However, a prosperous planet like Ketla didn't have strict regulations for outsiders. After leaving the management office, Yang Tian brought 7 light rain and the others to the Universe Bank next to the management office. He made a crystal card and deposited 50,000 star crystals in one go. At the same time, Yang Tian took out a portion of the star crystal from his storage bracelet and exchanged them for 100,000 standard star crystals. Exchanging here only required 0.5% of the fee, which was half of what it was on Lego Planet. After leaving the Universe Bank branch and putting the crystal card into his storage bracelet, Yang Tian asked 7 Light Rain and the others if they should find a place to stay for a long time. On Ketla Planet, there were also hotels as temporary resting places. However, if he wanted to arrange for 7 Light Rain and the others to stay on this planet, they couldn't just stay in hotels. 7 Light Rain nodded. Yang Tian opened the auxiliary device again and clicked on it. After a few minutes, he found a suitable place for 7 Light Rain and the others. Yang Tian called for another car. After getting on the car, he told the intelligent driving system to go to Area 103. In Kai City, Area 103 was a newly built residential area. Kai City was huge. The car drove at full speed for more than 10 minutes before arriving at Area 103. After getting off the car, what appeared in front of Yang Tian and the others was a very large residential area. The periphery of the residential area was surrounded by a clear lake. The lake's surface area was very wide. There were also transportation vehicles like boats on the lake. Many people rode the boats on the lake for leisure. The periphery of the lake was also filled with flowers and plants. Some birds could be seen playing happily among the flowers and plants. The humans on this planet gave Yang Tian the impression that they were very leisurely. The pace of their lives was very slow. This was something that humans on Earth could not compare to. This kind of lifestyle was what humans on Earth hoped for. If not for the outbreak of the YS virus, would humans have developed into this kind of lifestyle in the end? Yang Tian did not have an answer in his heart. Yang Tian led 7 Light Rain and the others into the management office of the residential area. He took out his green card to a young female staff member inside. After completing the registration, Yang Tian chose a building that was not very tall. He bought an entire floor and spent 20,000 star crystals. It seemed that the purchasing power of star crystals was still very high. Under the guidance of the female staff member, Yang Tian and the others arrived at the 7th floor of Building 082. The entire 7th floor now belonged to Yang Tian and the others. The female staff member gave Yang Tian and the others a brief introduction of the 7th floor. There were a total of 8 bedrooms on the 7th floor for sleeping and resting. The other rooms were the swimming room, fitness room, smart medical room, virtual online entertainment room, storage room, utility room. These rooms added up to more than 20 rooms in total. The rooms for sleeping and resting also had their own washrooms and bathrooms. Of course, this was only the layout of the rooms. The furnishings inside had to be purchased by themselves. What made Yang Tian happy was that there was no need to pay for water, electricity, and management. He only needed to pay a star crystal service fee every cycle. A cycle on Ketla Star was what was called 1 year on Earth. 1 revolution on Ketla Star was about 1.5 years on Earth. The service fee was very cheap. Yang Tian did not want to bother with the layout of the rooms. He left it to 7 Light Rain and the others. At this time, he planned to go to the Superstar Academy to take a look. This was the purpose of Yang Tian coming to this planet. The Superstar Academy and the Superstar Divine Temple must be related. If he entered the Superstar Academy, then would he have the opportunity to enter the Superstar Divine Temple and see Qin Fei? Yang Tian directly handed the bank card to 7 Light Rain and said to her, "I will go to the Superstar Academy to take a look. If there is anything you need, you can buy it yourselves." The star crystals inside should be enough for the time being. Superstar Academy? I want to go too. Yang Tian had just finished speaking when Seven Light Hao said in surprise. Yang Tian looked at Seven Light Hao and asked with a smile, "Have you heard of the Superstar Academy?" Seven Light Hao nodded. "When I was in Ligu Planet, I heard from a foreign cultivator that that person wanted to enter the Superstar Academy but did not pass the examination. I heard that the Superstar Academy can cultivate a lot of powerhouses." Yang Tian thought for a moment and nodded. "All right then, you will come with me." "Okay." As soon as Yang Tian's voice fell, Seven Light Hao jumped up happily, looking very excited. After leaving Residential Area 103, Yang Tian immediately used the auxiliary device to call a car and said to the intelligent driving system, "Go to the Superstar Academy." Chapter 284. As soon as Yang Tian finished speaking, the car's AI system prompted, "It's very far away. The fee is very high." Yang Tian smiled. "Stop talking nonsense. Let's drive." Then, the car started and began to move quickly. More than 10 minutes later, the maglev car took Yang Tian and Seven Light Hao out of Kai City and drove on a wide road. Whether it was inside or outside the city, the road that the car drove on looked like it was made of melted glass. It was dark blue and looked smooth and bright. If one squatted down to take a closer look, they would find that there were countless small protrusions on the road. Each of the protrusions had a soft, transparent plastic object on it. It seemed to be used to prevent slipping. It looked like goosebumps on a human skin. The scenery outside the window became blurry because of the car's high speed. It was obvious that the car's speed had surpassed the speed of sound. Yang Tian closed his eyes. He could take this opportunity to rest. The little blue dragon and Seven Light Hao, who were lying on his shoulder, looked out of the window curiously. The little blue dragon was fine. In this situation, it could also see things outside. However, with Seven Light Hao's reaction speed, he definitely could not see the scenery outside the window. He did not know what he was looking at. Perhaps it was because he was too excited. For Seven Light Hao, even if he could not enter the Superstar Academy, just standing outside and looking around would satisfy his strong curiosity. About an hour later, the car finally stopped. When he felt the car stop, Yang Tian opened his eyes. It was already dark outside. It turned out that the car had arrived at the other side of the planet. Although it was night, the lights outside were very bright. The car door did not open. The AI system prompted that he needed to pay 5 star crystals. The bank card had been given to Seven Light Rain. Yang Tian took out 5 star crystals from his storage bracelet. This kind of unmanned maglev car could not only swipe a card, but also pay star crystals directly. It was quite convenient. Yang Tian put the star crystal into a device that was similar to a coin slot in the car. With a click, the car door opened. Yang Tian and Qi Guang Hao got out of the car. What appeared in front of them was a tall courtyard gate. There were a few words written on the gate that Yang Tian didn't recognize. Yang Tian didn't even need to guess to know that the words Superstar Academy were written on it. At the entrance of this huge academy, there was a huge statue of a strange beast. It looked like a rhinoceros. On both sides of the entrance, there were 2 guards in black armor and carrying long sabers. When Yang Tian and Qi Guang Hao got off the car, the two turned their heads and looked at Yang Tian and Qi Guang Hao with cold eyes. Yang Tian glanced at the gate of the Superstar Academy and directly walked over. "Stop!" When Yang Tian and Seven Light Hao walked past the statue, one of the guards in black armor immediately shouted. Yang Tian and Qi Guang Hao stopped at the same time. "This is the Superstar Academy. Please leave immediately." The other guard continued. Yang Tian smiled and said, "We are here to sign up. We want to become a student of the Superstar Academy." The 2 guards looked at Yang Tian and Qi Guang Hao. One of them said, "It's night now. It's not the time to sign up. Please come back at dawn." Yang Tian didn't expect this situation. He turned around and found that the car that sent them here had already left. At the gate of the academy, there were no other buildings around. It seemed very empty. Even if they called a car here, it would take a long time to get here. Yang Tian was helpless and said to the two guards, "Then I'll wait here." "Okay," one of the guards said, "but please stay away from the gate. Don't hinder us." Yang Tian turned around and casually walked forward with Qi Guanghao. They only stopped when they were out of the range of the lights in front of the courtyard. The front of the gate was very clean, and there was a lawn. Yang Tian directly lay down on the lawn and looked at the sky with his hands as his pillow. The night sky of this planet was very beautiful. It was full of bright stars. From time to time, they could see the traces of spaceships flying by, just like meteors. Qi Guanghao also followed Yang Tian and lay down on the lawn. The surroundings were very quiet. Yang Tian turned his head and looked at Qi Guanghao. He asked with a smile, "Qi Guanghao, do you want to enter the Superstar Academy?" Hearing Yang Tian's question, Qi Guanghao couldn't help but be surprised. He then said, "Of course. If I can enter the Superstar Academy, I will definitely become a strong person in the future. I will have the ability to protect my elder sister and younger sister." When he said these words, Qi Guanghao looked very excited, but after he finished speaking, his expression dimmed and he said, "With my talent, I guess I can't enter this academy." Qi Guanghao was the same as Yang Tian. From a young age, he had the dream of becoming a strong person in his heart. After Qi Guanghao finished speaking, Yang Tian didn't speak anymore. He just opened his eyes and looked at the stars in the sky. Lying on this soft lawn and sleeping was very comfortable. After letting out a long breath, Qi Guanghao also closed his eyes. A few minutes later, a snoring sound came from his mouth. This guy actually fell asleep. Not long after, Yang Tian also felt sleepy and said to the little blue dragon lying on the side, "Xiaolong, look after me. I'm going to sleep for a while." The little blue dragon nodded to Yang Tian. Since the little blue dragon swallowed the eyeball of the one-eyed expert, his temperament became calmer. If the little blue dragon was a child on Earth, he was now equivalent to a teenager. When Yang Tian closed his eyes, the little blue dragon looked up at the stars in the sky. There was a hint of loneliness in his eyes. This kind of look is the expression that humans have when they miss home and their loved ones. Yang Tian relaxed his mind, and after a few minutes, he started to feel drowsy. When Yang Tian was really about to fall asleep, suddenly, a kacha-kacha sound rang out. Yang Tian immediately opened his eyes and turned his head to look in the direction of the sound. He saw an old man in a blue robe walking over. This old man didn't have a strong aura, giving people a sense of familiarity. However, Yang Tian knew that this person was not simple. He should be a strong person. After the old man walked to the lawn, he saw Yang Tian and Qi Guanghao lying on the lawn and smiled slightly. Then he sat down and lay down like Yang Tian and the others. He opened his eyes and looked at the countless stars in the sky. Yang Tian didn't feel sleepy at all. He turned over and sat up. Looking at the old man, he hesitated and said, "Excuse me, are you a professor of the Superstar Academy?" The reason why Yang Tian asked this was because he found that the old man came out of the gate of the Superstar Academy, and the two guards didn't make a sound. Obviously, this old man's status in the Superstar Academy must be very high. At such an old age, he must not be a student. At least, he should be a teacher. Hearing Yang Tian's inquiry, the old man still looked at the sky and didn't turn his head. He only said faintly, "You guessed right. Are you a student who came here to register?" Yang Tian nodded. "I have this plan." Yang Tian answered like this. The old man laughed and asked, "Is the guy sleeping next to you also a student?" Yang Tian looked at Qi Guanghao. This guy was sleeping to the point that saliva was flowing out of the corner of his mouth. He had a very sweet appearance. Yang Tian couldn't help but laugh and replied, "Yes, he wants to enter the Superstar Academy." The old man shook his head. "You have a chance, but he doesn't because he is too weak. The Superstar Academy generally won't accept a weak student like him." "Then how can I enter the Superstar Academy? What kind of assessment do I have to go through?" Yang Tian asked again. When Yang Tian's voice fell, the old man laughed. He thought that Yang Tian was very interesting. A person who wanted to enter the Superstar Academy didn't know some common sense issues. Under Yang Tian's expectant gaze, the old man replied, "Wait until dawn. won't you know? Yang Tian nodded helplessly. Chapter 285. Unknowingly, Yang Tian finally fell asleep. When the sound of ridicule rang in his ears, Yang Tian woke up and opened his eyes. This sleep was really deep. At this time, the sky was already bright, and the grass was wet with dew, but Qi Guanghao was still sleeping soundly. The little blue dragon was still lying in the same place, looking around. It was obvious that he did not sleep last night. At this time, the gate of the Superstar Academy was full of maglev cars, and a lot of people gathered. Almost all of them were young people, and all of them were carrying weapons. These people, are they all going to participate in the Superstar Academy's assessment? Yang Tian felt a little strange and thought, is there so many people at the gate of the Superstar Academy every day? Yang Tian immediately woke up Qi Guanghao, and the two of them came to the gate of the academy. There was a table at the gate of the academy with a glass of water on the table, and an old man sitting behind the table. When Yang Tian saw the old man, his eyes suddenly widened. It turned out that this old man was the old man who was lying on the lawn sleeping last night. The young people who came to participate in the assessment lined up in a long line. Yang Tian looked at the line. There were about 50 people, so he pulled Qi Guang how to line up at the back of the line. Yang Tian noticed that everyone's expression was a little nervous. They were probably afraid of being eliminated. The line moved forward slowly, and Yang Tian saw that some people in the front of the line were excitedly entering the academy gate after being selected, while those who were not selected stood aside dejectedly. There was no detection equipment at the scene. When everyone came to the table, the old man just looked at them, and he basically did not speak. Those who passed, he waved his hand, and those who did not, he waved his hand. This kind of situation made Yang Tian think of the beauty pageant in the TV series. He thought that he might have passed because last night the old man said that he had a chance. 10 minutes later, there were only about 20 people left. The person in front of Yang Tian was a young man with short hair. Suddenly, he turned around and looked at Yang Tian. Are you also here to participate in the assessment? Hearing such a question, Ting Tian couldn't help but laugh. If they weren't here to participate in the test, why would they line up here? However, Tomorrow still nodded. He knew that this short-haired young man was nervous. Are you confident? The young man asked. About 70%. Yang Tian smiled. The young man nodded. Your state is much higher than mine. I'm just a meteor state warrior. You must be a planetary state or above, right? Planetary state, domain lord realm, Yang Tian said. When Yang Tian reported his realm, the short-haired young man's eyes widened in surprise. Planet domain lord. If you're younger than 20 years old, you'll definitely be accepted. Yang Tian was puzzled. Can age be seen? The short-haired young man said, Of course. That old man is very powerful. As long as he glances at you, he can see your age and state. It's more accurate than a machine. A long time ago, if there were so many people, it would take an entire day. And now, it's time for a meal. After the short-haired young man finished speaking, Yang Tian asked, Here, will there be so many people every day? The short-haired young man shook his head. It's only this year. After this year, it will be another 3 years before the Superstar Academy will recruit students again. Why do you want to enter the Superstar Academy? Yang Tian asked again. This question to the short-haired young man was just like when he asked Yang Tian if they were here to register. It was ridiculous. However, he still answered. Entering the Superstar Academy means you're a subordinate of the Superstar Temple. After you come out, your status will naturally be different. More importantly, you can get the best training in the academy. The Superstar Academy has a lot of top powerhouses in the universe with cultivation experience. From them, you can learn a lot of cultivation experience. After the short-haired young man finished speaking, there were only a few people in front of him. He immediately turned around and looked at the old man in front of him more nervously. From the content of the conversation just now, Yang Tian learned a lot of information. First, as he had guessed, he had a high chance of being accepted. This was because a year on this planet was much longer than a year on Earth. According to the time on this planet, Yang wasn't even 18 years old yet. Second, the Superstar Academy's enrollment time was almost every 4 years. If he missed this year, he would have to wait for another 3 years. Moreover, the enrollment time was very long, almost a year. At this time, Yang Tian couldn't help but think of the triangular amethyst that the former goddess gave him. Thinking of this thing, Yang Tian immediately took it out from the storage bracelet. If he took out this thing during the assessment, would he be able to get in through the back door? Yang Tian turned his head and glanced at Qi Guanghao. After thinking about it, he felt that his chances of being selected were very high. He handed the amethyst to Qi Guanghao and said, "During the assessment, let the old man see this thing. Maybe you can be accepted. If the old man asks you, you can say that this thing was given to you by a very beautiful woman in Lagu Planet." When Yang Tian said these words to Qi Guanghao, he used his mental power to wrap the sound waves from his body and directly transmitted them to Qi Guanghao. His voice was very low. Yang Tian didn't know if these words would be heard by the old man. Why did Yang Tian do this? Because he knew that the sealed goddess must have some conflict with the Superstar Temple. If he showed this thing, there might be trouble later. Yang Tian also thought that he wanted to enter the Superstar Academy just to see Qin Fei. Looking at the amethyst that Yang Tian gave him, Qi Guanghao wanted to speak, but Yang Tian immediately raised his hand and made a silent gesture. Qi Guanghao immediately understood and nodded towards Yang Tian. The queue slowly moved forward, and soon it was Yang Tian's turn. The old man glanced at Yang Tian, smiled slightly, and waved his hand. The meaning was very clear. Yang Tian passed the assessment. It was that simple, just a glance was enough. Then, it was Qi Guanghao's turn. At this time, Yang Tian was still a little nervous. He didn't know if the old man recognized the amethyst in Qi Guanghao's hand. If he didn't see it or didn't have any relationship with the former goddess, this amethyst would definitely not have any effect. Qi Guanghao would be very disappointed. When the old man saw Qi Guanghao, he wanted to wave his hand, but soon his eyes widened because he saw the amethyst in Qi Guanghao's hand. "This amethyst, where did you get it?" The old man stared at Qi Guanghao's eyes and asked. Qi Guanghao and the old man looked at each other, then turned to the side and nervously replied, "Yes, it was given to me by a very beautiful woman." "Where is it?" the old man immediately asked again. Qi Guanghao replied, "Lagu Planet." Hearing that it was Lagu Planet, the old man's eyes narrowed slightly, then nodded and waved his hand. The meaning was obvious. Qi Guanghao passed the old man's interview. He didn't expect that one day he would be able to enter the Superstar Academy. This was his dream. Qi Guanghao excitedly raised his fist and looked at Yang Tian with a grateful expression. Yang Tian didn't see it, but at this time the old man glanced at him. Chapter 286. This time, including Yang Tian and Seven Light Hao, there were a total of 25 people who passed the old man's assessment. The number of people who came to sign up was about 150 people. The probability of passing was less than 1 in 6. It was not very low. Even the short-haired young man who talked to Yang Tian before passed the assessment. However, Yang Tian knew that this was only a preliminary examination, or rather, an interview. To truly enter the Superstar Academy, it was not a simple matter. Those who did not pass the assessment left dejectedly. The old man took Yang Tian and the other 25 people and walked into the Superstar Academy. After entering the academy gate, there was a dense forest. Yang Tian had never seen these trees before. They were as thick as a person's waist and tens of meters tall. They were planted very neatly. The ground was covered with bluestone slabs and was very clean. In the forest, there were also birds resting. When Yang Tian and the others came into the forest, the birds were disturbed and flew around. At this time, the stars in the sky had risen. The temperature was very high. Standing outside the forest, one would feel a burst of heat. After entering the forest, Yang Tian immediately felt cool all over. The old man walked slowly in front. As he walked, he said, "Just now, I only looked at your static power. Next, you will need to undergo a dynamic power assessment. The so-called static power is the power that you have in your body. Our body is actually an energy reservoir that can contain countless kinds of power. Most of the cultivators in the universe cultivate the power of blood. This power comes from the cells in our body. In addition to the power of blood, you can also have other powers, such as spiritual power, chi meridian power, and so on. The dynamic power is the amount of energy that can burst out from your body when you encounter a crisis or during a battle. It is often called the battle power. Everyone's dynamic power is different. For example, in a battle between humans of the same realm, even if the static power is the same, the result of the battle will definitely be different, because the dynamic power will be affected by the surrounding environment, and there's also your psychological quality. The old man spoke as he walked, causing Yang Tian to nod his head incessantly. The old man's words were too reasonable, allowing Yang Tian to gain a lot of knowledge. After the old man finished speaking, he stopped and turned around to look at the 25 people before him. The 25 of you here have varying levels of cultivation. The weakest is no different from an ordinary person, while the strongest is already a planetary state region lord. Regardless of whether your realm is high or low, except for one person, you will be facing opponents of the same realm. If you can defeat them or hold on for a certain period of time, you will pass the assessment and officially become a junior student of the Superstar Academy. At this point, the old man glanced at the little blue dragon on Yang Tian's shoulder and added, "If you have a pet beast, your pet beast cannot participate in the battle." Yang Tian understood that this was for the sake of fairness and immediately nodded. After that, the old man didn't say anything else and walked forward silently. At this time, a young man suddenly asked, "Sir, may I ask what your name is?" The old man didn't stop and continued to walk forward. Without turning his head, he replied, "When you pass the next assessment, you will be qualified to know my name. At this time, don't try to curry favor with me. It's useless. Even if I let you pass, it will indirectly harm you. After entering the Divine Academy, there will be countless experiences waiting for you, and in those experiences, there will be deaths every time. The road to becoming a powerhouse will be paved with corpses. I'm not trying to scare you, but if the 25 of you pass in less than 100 years, it will be considered good if one of you can survive." After the old man finished speaking, they all fell silent. Yes, it was not so easy to become a top powerhouse. If they were not careful, they would lose their lives. After a few minutes, the old man led Yang Tian and the other 25 people through the forest. What appeared in front of Yang Tian's eyes was a spacious field. There were 25 people in the field, all of them wearing black armor. These people were also wearing masks, so their faces couldn't be seen. The 25 black-armored people were arranged in several rows and stood there quietly, motionless, like 25 statues. This spacious field was the size of a standard football field. The ground was planted with turf. After the old man led Yang Tian and the others here, he sat on the ground, raised his hand, and said, "Let's begin." As soon as the old man finished speaking, a person immediately walked out from among the black-armored people. He didn't speak and raised his hand to point at Yang Tian and the others. Yang Tian judged from the aura emitted by this black-armored person that he should be a general at the meteor level. The person he pointed at, a thin young man, immediately walked out. This young man was also a general at the meteor level. The two of them stood face to face, more than 10 meters apart. After a few seconds, the black-armored person suddenly moved and rushed towards the thin young man. With a bang, the black-armored person's fist hit his opponent's chest, making a muffled sound. It was too sudden and too fast. The thin young man didn't have time to react. His body flew upside down and landed on the grass with a bang. The whole process lasted less than half a minute. The outcome was decided. The thin young man was slightly injured. He immediately got up from the ground, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and shouted, "I'm not convinced. He attacked too quickly. I'm definitely stronger than him. I want to compete again." At this time, the old man sitting on the grass smiled and said, "Your strength is stronger than his, but your speed is not as fast as his, especially your reaction speed. You are too far behind him. This kind of speed is also a part of dynamic power. After the old man finished speaking, he waved his hand. Immediately after, two guards in black armor without helmets walked over. One of them gestured for the young man to enter. The thin young man sighed helplessly, shook his head, and walked towards the gate of the college. This person had already been eliminated. At this time, the black-armored person who defeated this young man bowed to the old man and quickly left. Then, the next black-armored person walked out. He didn't say anything and pointed at one of the 25 people in Yang Tian's group. A strong young man with short hair immediately walked out. Just like before, this tall young man stood more than 10 meters away from the black-armored person. After about 5 seconds, the black-armored person moved and rushed towards this tall young man. Bang, bang, bang. The two figures flashed rapidly, constantly colliding with each other. The tall young man persisted for about 3 minutes before he was punched to the ground by the black-armored person. He didn't get up for a long time. At this time, the old man smiled and said, "Pass." Chapter 287. After the tall young man was knocked down, he laid on the ground and didn't have the strength to get up. He thought he was eliminated, but he didn't expect the old man to say that he had passed. Ha ha ha! After being stunned, the tall young man laughed excitedly and jumped up from the ground. The black-armored man who was fighting with the tall young man bowed to the old man and retreated. The tall young man who passed the test consciously stood to the side. Next, another black-armored man stood up and pointed at Yang Tian and the others. This time, it was the short-haired young man who spoke to Yang Tian before. The short-haired young man was probably the second weakest among the 25 people. His meteor warrior level strength was only equivalent to a level 9 human warrior on Earth. The black-armored man who was fighting with him was, of course, also a meteor warrior level. In the eyes of Yang Tian and the others, the fight between the two wasn't as exciting as before. Fortunately, the short-haired young man lasted for about 5 minutes before being knocked down to the ground. The tall young man from before lasted for about 3 minutes before passing the test. This short-haired young man could last for 5 minutes, so he should pass. Yang Tian thought. Sure enough, the old man nodded with a smile and said, "Pass." The short-haired young man also jumped up excitedly and winked at Yang Tian. Yang Tian smiled. He didn't expect that it would be Qi Guanghao's turn next. The black-armored man who was fighting with Qi Guanghao was a meteor warrior. Yang Tian then remembered that in the forest, the old man said, "Except for one person." This person was probably referring to Qi Guanghao. Yang Tian didn't need to think to know the result. This black-armored man could knock down Qi Guanghao with just one finger. Qi Guanghao, who was standing beside Yang Tian, looked at Yang Tian with a bitter smile and then walked out. Unexpectedly, the old man opened his mouth and said, "Pass." As soon as the word "old man" came out, everyone's eyes widened. Even Yang Tian was very surprised. Qi Guanghao thought that he would be eliminated, but he didn't expect that he would pass without even fighting. When he heard the old man say "pass," he was stunned. Then, he was overjoyed. Qi Guanghao was very happy, but some people were not convinced, especially those who did not have the confidence to pass this test. At this time, a tall young man with long hair stood out and asked the old man. He didn't even compete. "Why did you let him pass?" The old man replied, "If I let him pass, he will pass. We refuse to accept this," the long-haired young man said. Then, he chuckled and said, "Please, I won't see you out." Then, two guards walked over and gestured for the long-haired young man to enter. The long-haired young man didn't expect that he wouldn't even be qualified to take the test after just standing up and saying a few words. I haven't participated in the competition yet." The long-haired young man looked at the old man and said in a panic. The old man only smiled and said, "Eliminated. I refuse to accept this. I refuse to accept this." The long-haired young man was carried by the two guards and walked towards the gate of the academy. He kept shouting and soon disappeared into the forest. At this time, the old man looked at the crowd and said, "Who else refuses to accept this? You can leave immediately." The old man's words intimidated the crowd, and no one dared to stand up and express their opinions. The old man glanced at the young people who would participate in the next test and said, "Here, whoever I let pass, he will pass. If I tell him to get lost, he will immediately get lost. If you don't believe me, you can try. That person just now, what if he goes to the academy's administrative office to sue you?" Someone asked. The one who spoke was an honest-looking young man. The old man looked at the young man. If he can sue this old man, or if he can enter the Superstar Academy, from then on, this old man will walk around naked. When the old man's voice fell, many people laughed. In Yang Tian's mind, the image of the old man walking around naked appeared. No one dared to raise any objections, and the test continued. What happened next surprised Yang Tian. That was because no one managed to pass. Because these black armored men were much more ruthless than before. Almost as soon as they attacked, they defeated their opponents. In less than 30 seconds, they were able to finish off an opponent. Obviously, these black armored men were angry because of the long-haired young man just now. If it was before, these black armored men were actually going easy on him. Then, after kicking out the long-haired young man, they went all out. Obviously, the old man had a very high prestige in the hearts of these black armored men. To them, the old man's words were indisputable. This situation surprised Yang Tian, and he guessed that the old man's status in the academy must be very high. The test went on at an extremely fast speed. After the black armored men finished the test, they bowed to the old man and immediately turned to leave. Finally, it was Yang Tian's turn. The aura that Yang Tian was emitting right now was that of a Star Realm Domain Lord. Of course, his opponent was also a Star Realm Domain Lord. The last remaining black armored man was the smallest of the 25 black armored men. At the beginning, he was the most inconspicuous among the 25 black armored men, but unexpectedly, he was the strongest. Looking at this black armored man, Yang Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. Looking at this person's figure, it seemed to be a woman. Similarly, Yang Tian and this black armored man stood facing each other with a distance of more than 10 meters apart. The little blue dragon, who had been lying on Yang Tian's shoulder, jumped onto Qi Guanghao's head and looked at Yang Tian with wide eyes. Qi Guanghao smiled foolishly, not caring about the little blue dragon's rudeness at all. With a Qi sound, the black armored man suddenly moved, turning into a series of black afterimages as he rapidly charged towards Yang Tian. During the course of the previous battle, Yang Tian knew that although these black armored men were weaker than the participants of the assessment, their speed was extremely fast, almost reaching the limit of the corresponding realm. In the eastern world of Earth, there is a saying that had been passed down for a long time. There is nothing that cannot be broken. Only speed cannot be broken. This was referring to speed. When one's speed reached a certain level, one's strength would naturally increase, just like how a piece of paper spinning at high speed could cut steel plate. Almost in an instant, the black armored man appeared in front of Yang Tian and punched towards Yang Tian's chest. Yang Tian was already prepared. With a move of his body, he dodged to the side. In terms of speed, 2 days wasn't bad. One must know that on the Purple Planet, he had been chased by Gao Yuan every day, and Gao Yuan was much stronger than this black armored man. Although everyone had brought their weapons to this competition, no one used any of their weapons. This was because if weapons were used, it would cause accidental injuries. Just as Yang Tian dodged, there was another Qi sound, and the black armored man appeared in front of him again. At that moment, Yang Tian saw a pair of eyes emitting a cold glint behind the black armor's mask. With a bang, Yang Tian was hit by the black armored man, and his body flew uncontrollably. After landing on the grass, he slid for dozens of meters before stopping. Seeing this, Qi Guanghao couldn't help but cry out, "Ah!" He didn't expect Yang Tian to be defeated so quickly. However, after taking this heavy blow, Yang Tian wasn't injured. After stopping, he bounced up and gave the black armored man a thumbs up, holding his chest and laughing. In the 2 brief exchanges just now, Yang Tian smelled a very pleasant fragrance coming from the black armored man. Obviously, Yang Tian's guess was correct. This black-armored man was a woman. Seeing Yang Tian chuckling at her, the black-armored woman seemed to be angered. She suddenly charged at Yang Tian again, this time at an even faster speed than before. Chapter 288. The black-armored woman was very fast and appeared in front of Yang Tian in an instant. This time, Yang Tian didn't dodge. Bang! A loud sound was heard. The black figure of the black armor man was like a black rubber ball that was sent flying towards Yang Tian, bouncing away. On the other hand, Yang Tian was like a thick wall, still standing at the same spot. The black-armored woman, who was bounced away by the powerful impact, suddenly stopped about 20 meters away from Yang Tian. At this time, the black-armored woman became clear in Qi Guanghao's eyes. From a moment the black-armored woman suddenly charged into the sky and was bounced away. The black-armored woman was a blurry shadow in his eyes. The black-armored woman who stopped didn't charge towards Yang Tian again. When the old man saw this, he smiled. "I want to use a weapon." At this time, the black-armored woman turned around and looked at the old man. Use a weapon? In this kind of test, under normal circumstances, weapons weren't allowed because it would cause accidental injuries. But at this time, the black-armored woman actually requested to use a weapon. As soon as the black-armored woman spoke, Qi Guanghao, the short-haired young man, and the large young man who passed the test realized that the person who had just fought with Yang Tian was actually a woman. The woman's voice was very beautiful, but her words were cold and emotionless. Would the old man allow the use of a weapon? Qi Guanghao, the short-haired young man, the large young man, Yang Tian, and even the guard standing not far away all looked at the old man. Under everyone's curious gazes, the old man smiled and nodded. At this time, the black-armored woman actually took off her helmet and shook her head. Her waterfall-like blue hair broke free from the restraint of the helmet and spread out. This woman's face was very delicate. It looked like a standard oval face with big eyes. After seeing this woman's appearance, Qi Guanghao and the large young man's eyes were filled with amazement. At the same time, they felt a little ashamed because this woman looked very young, but was already a planetary state domain lord. Her strength far surpassed men like them. After casually throwing the helmet on the ground, the black-armored woman raised both her hands. Suddenly, two hard black whips appeared in her hands. The handles of the whips were more than a foot long, and the heads of the whips were about 3 feet long. They looked like they were formed by countless triangular metal pieces glued together. When Yang Tian saw this weapon, he knew that it was not as simple as it looked. The black-armored woman took out her weapon, and Yang Tian immediately took out 15 from his storage bracelet. He unsheathed the blade and threw the scabbard aside. Usually, Yang Tian hung the blade at his waist so that he could use it at any time. He had only kept it in his storage bracelet when he was on the Kaitra planet. Yang Tian held the blade in his hand and pointed the blade diagonally towards the ground as he continued to pour the power of the Dragon Ball into the blade. After absorbing a large amount of red lightning, every time Yang Tian used the saber, he would need to expend more energy compared to when he first obtained it. However, the power it released was even more powerful. After absorbing a large amount of star crystals, Yang Tian's Dragon Ball power was very abundant. Under the infusion of a large amount of Dragon Ball power, 15th red blade suddenly lit up and made a buzzing sound. At this time, when the old man saw 15 in Yang Tian's hand, his eyes were filled with doubt and nostalgia. He seemed to have seen this blade a long time ago. Yang Tian didn't notice the old man's expression at this time. He was focused on the black-armored woman. When the black-armored woman held the two whips, her aura became even more fierce. Obviously, this woman was an expert in using weapons. When she was empty-handed, she couldn't display her full strength. You have to be careful. My weapon attack is very strange, the black-armored woman said to Yang Tian. This was a warning, but at the same time, it was also a threat. Yang Tian smiled and nodded. The black-armored woman nodded at Yang Tian, indicating that she was about to attack. Then, she pressed down the two whips in her hand. The tips of the whips were pointed behind her and suddenly moved. At this time, The black armored woman became blurry in the eyes of the seven Guang Hao and the others. She even disappeared. They were not strong enough, and their reaction speed was not fast enough. In Yang Tian's eyes, the black armored woman's charging posture was not good enough. She held the whips with both hands and pointed behind her. Her upper body leaned forward, looking like she was throwing herself into someone's arms. However, this running speed was much faster than before. In an instant, the black armored woman arrived in front of Yang Tian. She raised the whip in her right hand and swept it towards Yang Tian's chest. During this process, the black armored woman's body began to spin. Yang Tian quickly took a step back and raised his blade to block the black armored woman's whip. Yang Tian's blade and the whip in the woman's right hand collided. The strong collision did not force the black armored woman back, although Yang Tian's strength was stronger than hers. This was because the black armored woman's body was spinning. Before the weapons collided, the black armored woman's body had already begun to spin. Using the force of the rotation, the black armored woman's whip and Yang Tian's blade were pressed against each other, rubbing against each other. At this time, the black armored woman's back was facing Yang Tian. Suddenly, another whip rushed out from under her armpit and attacked Yang Tian's chest. It was very fast, like a venomous snake that had been hiding for a long time, suddenly attacking its prey. Seeing this, Yang Tian was shocked. He kicked off the ground and quickly retreated. However, the whip that rushed towards him was still following him closely. At this moment, Yang Tian noticed that the whip in the black armored woman's hand could be extended. When the triangular whip was about to touch his body, Yang Tian twisted his waist and the whip brushed past his chest. At this time, Yang Tian saw that the triangular whip was connected to many small metal chains that were entwined together. That was why it had grown so long all of a sudden. The black armored woman's whip was also a strange weapon. At this time, the black armored woman's attack was not finished. When Yang Tian twisted his body to dodge, she shook the whip handle. The whip that brushed past Yang Tian suddenly turned and swept towards Yang Tian. Yang Tian had long had this kind of combat experience. Back on Earth, Fonda used a chain knife and had this kind of attack. Facing the whip and the thin chains that were coming from behind, Yang Tian lowered his body again, sliding his back against the grass. The thin chains that were coming from behind brushed past Yang Tian's nose. At this time, the black armored woman stopped and shook the whip handle. The long whip, no, it should be called a soft whip, quickly retracted. Bang! When Yang Tian and the black armored woman finished this move, the sound of weapons colliding was heard by Seven Light Hao and the others. At this time, Yang Tian had already slid more than 10 meters on the grass. The black armored woman had already stopped. When she looked at Yang Tian, she frowned. Chapter 289. Phew, Yang Tian, who had leapt to his feet, allowed a long sigh of relief. This black-armored woman was simply too powerful, especially her speed. Even Yang Tian, who had undergone high-origin devil training, was flustered. CSISI. Looking at the black-armored woman, who was dozens of meters away from him, Yang Tian casually swung his blade a few times. More than a dozen red wind blades shot out from the blade, rapidly slicing towards the black-armored woman. Woo, woo, woo. Facing the rapidly approaching blade energy, the black-armored woman didn't panic. Her hands shook the handles of the whips in her hands, and the two whips immediately shot out, extending several meters and turning into soft whips. Under the black-armored woman's control, the soft whips formed from countless chains spun in front of her, forming a black circular shadow. Poo-pee-you-pee-you. The red wind blade struck the black circular shadow, creating sounds of collision and disappearing. Seeing this, Yang Tian was extremely shocked. His sharp blade energy had been neutralized by the black-armored woman just like that. As the black-armored woman spun the whips in her hands, waves of powerful energy fluctuations emanated from the whips. They appeared to be heavy and powerful. Seeing this, the old man sitting not far away couldn't help but nod. Both Yang Tian and the black-armored woman were able to release powerful energy, forming special offensive and defensive methods. After Yang Tian's dozen red wind blades were all neutralized, the black-armored woman stopped, and the circular shadow of the whips in front of her also disappeared. What other methods of attack do you have? Feel free to use them, the black-armored woman said indifferently. At this time, the black-armored woman's tone wasn't as cold as before. Her words were filled with an intense fighting spirit. For a woman to have such a strong fighting spirit, Yang Tian admired it. At this time, in the black-armored woman's eyes, Yang Tian was an expert worth using all her strength against. As for Yang Tian, he also felt that fighting with this black-armored woman would allow him to gain a lot of combat experience. As soon as the black-armored woman's voice fell, a strong fighting spirit appeared in both their eyes. Superstar Academy had a strict hierarchy. Every level of student had their own territory. For example, Star Academy students generally stayed in the beginner area. Star Academy students' territory was in the intermediate area, and Star Academy student territory was in the advanced area. As for Star Academy students and Superstar Academy students, they were considered to have graduated and could directly go to the Superstar Divinity Temple, and the position wasn't low. From this point of view, one could see how strong Superstar Academy was. In its subordinate academies, Star Academy students were only students, but in other academies, Star Academy students were already strong. Where did that battle maniac go? Why didn't I see her training in the gravity room today? Don't tell me it's her monthly period? Star Academy's eyes. The black-armored woman's student green is Green's level S's. This long-haired student had green skin and light blue curly hair. He was also wearing a loose black robe. When he heard the student beside him, he turned around with a smile and said, "The battle maniac was called by the professor to assess the students. He said that there was a student who could possibly defeat her who came to report." When the battle maniac heard, "She went over early in the morning and hasn't returned yet." A student who can defeat her in the same realm? Is this a joke? The tall, short-haired young man said with a smile and disbelief. The green-skinned student said, "I don't believe it either. I guess the professor deliberately provoked her." "Which professor?" The short-haired young man asked again. "Shenwu professor. He's been in charge of the assessment for the new students these days. Don't you know?" The green-skinned student laughed. The short-haired young man immediately frowned and pinched his chin. "If it's Shenwu professor, then it can't be wrong. Shenwu professor is very good at judging people. He wouldn't deliberately fight the battle maniac." "You mean?" When the green-skinned young man heard this, his eyes lit up. The strong-built, short-haired young man said excitedly, "A student who can fight the battle maniac must be very strong. Their battle must be very exciting. We can go and watch. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go. If we're late, their battle will be over." The green-skinned young man said anxiously. Before he could finish his sentence, he turned around and sped towards the academy's main gate. The tall, short-haired young man immediately followed. The conversation between the two was heard by the people around them. These people also followed curiously. In Superstar Academy, whether it was the beginner, intermediate, or advanced students, they were all full of enthusiasm for battle. This was also the school atmosphere that Superstar Academy had always maintained. At this time, not only the students of the intermediate area, but even the stellar-level students of the advanced area came to the assessment area and stood in the distance to watch Yang Tian and the black-armored woman known as the Battle Maniac. This was because Yang Tian's female opponent was extremely famous in the academy. She was a woman, but among the students of the intermediate area, her combat strength had always been ranked first. No one in the same realm could defeat her. It was said that if this battle maniac reached the stellar level in the future, she would also crush opponents of the same realm. When Yang Tian and the black-armored woman burst out with a strong fighting spirit, the students watching the battle in the distance had already reached as many as 100 people. Yang Tian had long noticed that there were people watching the battle in the distance. He knew that those people were the students of Superstar Academy, so he didn't care at all. "Now it's your turn. At this time, Yang Tian looked at the black-armored woman and suddenly said, the black-armored woman was known as the battle maniac. Naturally, she didn't like to dawdle with her opponent. When Yang Tian said so, she immediately nodded. Punk! Suddenly, the black-armored woman shook her long whip, and the two soft parts of the whip struck the ground. The power she poured into the whip blasted 2 deep trenches in the grass, and the soil mixed with grass splashed everywhere. At this time, the ground under Yang Tian's feet also shook. There was a distance of nearly 30 meters between them. Why did the black-armored woman do this? Qi Guanghao, who was watching the battle from the side, was puzzled. He saw Yang Tian suddenly shoot up. Immediately, the grass under Yang Tian's feet suddenly exploded. Countless small black rays formed a large net and shrouded towards Yang Tian, who was in the air. It turned out that when the black-armored woman's whip hit the ground, the whip body formed by the small chains in her hand disintegrated and continued to extend. It quickly passed under the grass and shrouded Yang Tian. These small chains, on each chain, carried the black-armored woman's powerful strength. If Yang Tian's reaction was not fast enough, he would be caught in the net. Moreover, this kind of attack method, people with little combat experience would probably not understand it like Qi Guanghao. Yang Tian, who was in the air, looked at the chain net below him. He used his saber to draw a circle in the air. More than 10 wind blades instantly shot out from the saber body. With a loud sound, Yang Tian's saber, Qi, came in contact with the chain net. With a loud pong sound, the chain net was scattered. Chapter 290. After dispersing the chain net, Yang Tian stomped his feet a few times. Using the force of the air, he quickly moved to the range of the chain net and landed on the ground with a flip. The black-armored woman already knew that the chain net could no longer trap Yang Tian. After dispersing the chain net, Yang Tian shook his whips to retrieve the countless thin chains. The whips in his hands turned into soft whips that were several meters long again. The black-armored woman clearly did this to guard against Yang Tian's counterattack. It's my turn now. Yang Tian smiled at the black-armored woman after landing. The black-armored woman nodded. At this moment, Yang Tian and the black-armored woman were also more than 30 meters away from each other. For the two of them, this was a distance that was very suitable for fighting. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Yang Tian suddenly waved the saber in his hand a few times. From a blade, 5 red wind blades were released at once. This move didn't look any different from the previous ones. However, the black-armored woman sensed that the red wind blades did not release any energy waves. This was because Yang Tian had used his mental power to envelop the wind blades. Since Yang Tian's attack was different, the black-armored woman's defense was naturally different as well. Earlier, she shook her whips to form a circular whip shadow in front of her. At this moment, the black-armored woman suddenly shot into the air. In a battle between experts, the higher one's boundary, the shorter the time needed to make a move. A split second might be too short for others to react, but it was a very long time for them. The 5 wind blades suddenly split into 2 as they flew at high speed and became 10 wind blades. They even made a turn and flew toward the black-armored woman in the air. The black-armored woman shook the soft whips in her hands in the air. The whips formed many whip shadows that hit the red wind blades, causing continuous poof sounds to be heard. Almost in an instant, the 10 red wind blades were dispersed by the black-armored woman. However, bang! The black-armored woman in the air suddenly let out a sound of impact. Her body was hit by a powerful force, and she flew back uncontrollably. After tumbling a few times in the air, she smashed into the grass. This attack did not injure the black-armored woman, and she quickly got up from the ground. The woman frowned when she saw a shallow scar on the chest of the black armor. If her black armor had not blocked Yang Tian's attack, she might have been injured. It turned out that Yang Tian did not release 5 wind blades, but 6. The 6th wind blade was very small, and it was closely behind one of the wind blades. When the 5 red wind blades were split into 10 by the black-armored woman's whips, the small wind blades were controlled by Yang Tian's mental power. and the woman could not dodge them in time. Many people could not understand this high-speed battle, but they knew that the black-armored woman was hit. Haha, that new student's amazing. Battle Maniac. Yeah, I didn't expect the Battle Maniac to be defeated. I thought she was invincible among students of the same level. I didn't expect someone to be able to stop her. This is just a small mistake. That new student's move just now was deceptive. Otherwise, the Battle Maniac could have dodged it. You're wrong. The professor said that if you can deceive your opponent during a battle, it's also a kind of strength. Among the students watching from afar, the meteor level and even the planet level students did not see what had just happened. Only a few planet level students and star level students clearly saw the process of the two's exchange. To them, the battle between Yang Tian and the Battle Maniac was very exciting. The two were not only competing in strength, but also in wits. Improvising in battle was also a kind of battle intelligence, and it was also a kind of dynamic strength. When the black-armored woman stood up from the ground, the old man smiled and nodded. Squeak, squeak. At this time, the little blue dragon lying on Qi Guanghao's head also let out an excited cry and cheered for Yang Tian. This was just a small loss. The black-armored woman obviously would not admit defeat. After frowning, her face returned to its calm expression. Then, she said to Yang Tian, "Next, it's my turn again." Yang Tian nodded again. Whoa. The black-armored woman suddenly shook her whips, and the whips lengthened again, forming two dragon fist-shaped circles in the air. The rapidly spinning air current produced a strong whistling sound. At this time, the black-armored woman had already released her whips. Two black tornadoes suddenly swept towards Yang Tian, and they were moving forward at an extremely fast speed. At the same time, the black-armored woman's figure disappeared from Yang Tian's sight. As soon as the two tornadoes appeared, they were still more than 20 meters away from Yang Tian, but Yang Tian could already feel their power. A powerful, binding force wrapped around Yang Tian in a strange way. This force was not only the power of the air current, but also a form of power that Yang Tian did not know about. This power was soft, and after attaching itself to his body, it made his whole body feel very comfortable. It was as if he was in a land of warmth, and Yang Tian did not want to move at all. Yang Tian was very surprised. This power not only worked on his body, but also on his fighting spirit. This black-armored woman also knows how to use mental power. Until now, other than Yang Tian himself, he had only seen Chu Yin and Guiying use mental power. Yang Tian did not know if this was the black-armored woman's strongest move. Facing the two black tornadoes and the black-armored woman who was nowhere to be seen, Yang Tian's eyes twitched. He wanted to dodge, but he wanted to disperse the black-armored woman's move even more. At this moment, Yang Tian thought of the terrifying energy he created on the spaceship when he came to planet Kaitra. Just thinking about it made Yang Tian instinctively move, because at this time, he did not have time to think. Mental power, Dragon Ball power, bloodline power, these three powers instantly merged into one in Yang Tian's body under the control of his powerful will. Yang Tian raised his left hand, and in the center of his palm, an energy sphere faintly emitting nine-colored light suddenly appeared. As soon as it appeared, this energy sphere was the size of a ping-pong ball. Although it was not big, it emitted a powerful aura of devouring, destruction, and assimilation. This aura was terrifying. As soon as Yang Tian's energy appeared, the old man's eyes suddenly widened. At this time, it was too late for him to stop, and his body suddenly disappeared from the spot. At the same time, Yang Tian swung his hand and threw out the energy sphere in his hand. This sphere emitting a terrifying aura. As soon as it escaped from Yang Tian's control, it rapidly expanded. At this time, Yang Tian was also looking forward to the result of the collision between his energy sphere and the black-armored woman's two black tornadoes. However, at this time, the old man suddenly appeared and blocked the path of the energy sphere. He raised his hands and then put them together. The energy sphere, which had already become the size of a soccer ball, was suddenly compressed and fell into the old man's hands. At this time, a black figure flashed behind the old man, and the black-armored woman appeared in front of Yang Tian's eyes. The two black tornadoes changed directions and quickly swept to the sides. Boom! Boom! All of a sudden, two violent explosions rang out. In the midst of these explosions, Yang Tian could hear some people screaming and cursing. Yang Tian did not pay attention to the damage caused to the spectating students after the two black tornadoes went out of control. He only stared at the old man's hands without blinking. The energy sphere between the old man's hands quickly became the size of a fingertip. At this time, Yang Tian could see that the old man's two palms were trembling. "Rise!" All of a sudden, the old man shouted. Then, he let go of his right hand that was covering the energy sphere. Boom! The finger-sized energy sphere turned into a ray of light, and like a firework, it rose into the air and exploded, making a sound louder than thunder. Chapter 291. The explosion hundreds of meters in the air created a shockwave that blew the Superstar Academy for a while. With the old man making a move, the competition naturally couldn't continue. "You also passed," the old man said with a frown after resolving Yang Tian's attack. "Oh," Yang Tian scratched his head and nodded. The old man added, "In the future, even if you're beaten by other students until your mother can't recognize you, you can't use this kind of energy." Looking at the old man's serious expression when he said this, Yang Tian knew that this was a warning. Yang Tian nodded again, helplessly. The old man was satisfied. He turned around and waved at Qi Guanghao and the others. Qi Guanghao, the short-haired young man, and the tall young man immediately walked over. "Professor, I'm going back." At this time, the black-armored woman bowed to the old man and said. The old man nodded. The black-armored woman took a deep look at Yang Tian before turning around and leaving. When the black-armored woman was walking, suddenly, two soft puff sounds came from both sides of her. The ground exploded, and her two long whips rushed out from the ground and were held in her hands. Seeing this, Yang Tian's eyes widened. He thought to himself, could it be that her two whips have spirituality? The old man saw Yang Tian looking at the black-armored woman and said with a smile, "Her name is Soli. Although she's a girl, she's a famous battle maniac in the academy. She's been in the academy for less than 4 years, and she's already reached the realm of a planetary domain lord. In these 4 years, she experienced hundreds of dangerous experiences and was lucky to survive in the end. When you become her classmate in the future, she will often look for you to fight." After the old man finished speaking, Yang Tian laughed. If it was a spar, Yang Tian couldn't ask for more. At this time, Qi Guanghao and the other two also walked over. There were about 150 people who participated in the assessment this time, but in the end, only 4 people were qualified to enter the academy. The most unlucky ones were the students who signed up after Qi Guanghao. After Qi Guanghao carried the little blue dragon to Yang Tian's side, the little blue dragon jumped from his head onto Yang Tian's shoulder. Looking at Yang Tian and the other 3, the old man smiled and said, "Next, you will become a student of the Superstar Academy. This old man wants to know, what is your purpose in coming to the academy?" Qi Guanghao was very excited. As soon as the old man finished speaking, he replied, "I want to become a powerhouse. I want to have the ability to protect my sisters and make their lives better." After Qi Guanghao finished speaking, he clenched his fists tightly. What he said was the truth. "For my family." The old man nodded with a smile and looked at the short-haired young man. The short-haired young man scratched his head and said, I don't want to disappoint my family." The old man also nodded and looked at the big young man. The big young man smiled and said, "I want to have a woman. After the Superstar Academy becomes strong, I have to kill her current husband and snatch her." Hearing what the big young man said, Yang Tian couldn't help but open his eyes wide and looked at this guy. When the guy saw Yang Tian looking at him, he smiled and said, "Don't misunderstand. The girl I like was snatched away by her current husband. That person also killed her parents. The old man nodded again and looked at Yang Tian. Yang Tian replied with a smile, I came to the Superstar Academy to see the current goddess. After Yang Tian finished speaking, they all stared at him. Yang Tian added, What I said is true. The old man smiled and said, No matter what your purpose is, even if you want to destroy the Superstar Academy, it is a reason to become strong. So, in the future, please work hard. I hope that many years later, I can see you again. After saying this, the old man said, According to your realm, you'll enter different learning areas. You stay, the others go register. The old man let Yang Tian stay. Qi Guanghao asked, Can we go home? The old man replied, Yes, after you register, you can even not stay in the academy. But if you don't work hard and are eliminated in the annual assessment, don't blame the academy. Qi Guanghao nodded with a smile and said to Yang Tian, Brother Yang, then I will go home first. I will go home tonight. Yang Tian nodded. After Qi Guanghao, the short-haired young man, and the big young man left, the old man looked at Yang Tian and asked with a smile, That purple crystal is yours, right? When the old man asked this, Yang Tian was stunned for a moment, then smiled and replied, Yes. The old man said, With your realm, even without this purple crystal, you are qualified to become a student of the Superstar Academy. 4 talented students. The Superstar Academy has never rejected them. That piece of amethyst is the keepsake of the previous goddess. Although that goddess has a different philosophy from us old fellows, we still respect her. Therefore, this old man will make an exception this time and let your companion enter the Superstar Academy for the sake of Goddess Face. But you have to tell him, don't think that the Academy will take special care of him with that purple crystal. After the old man finished speaking, Yang Tian nodded. Go! For you, entering the Superstar Academy is the beginning of a new life. The old man said and waved his hand. Yang Tian turned around and walked towards the depths of the academy. In that direction, a large forest was destroyed by the female battle maniac named Soli. At this time, some workers in blue uniforms were cleaning up the forest. They were very efficient. After passing through the forest, what appeared in front of Yang Tian was a large building. These buildings were not tall, and they looked like they were built with silver-white metal. Whoosh! At this moment, the sound of an aircraft flying at high speed came from Yang Tian's left. Yang Tian turned his head and saw a maglev car driving close to the ground and stopping less than 5 meters away from him. In the car was a young woman in a blue uniform. Get in the car and follow me to register. The woman stuck her head out of the car window and said to Yang Tian. When Yang Tian got in the car and the car drove at high speed, Yang Tian realized that the Superstar Academy was really big, even bigger than the hero city on Earth. The car flew close to the ground at an extremely fast speed and soon entered the Academy's buildings. The young woman in the car said to Yang Tian, You are a planetary state student and will enter the intermediate area of the Academy to study. The Academy is very free. At the same time, it is also very independent. You can cultivate in the way you want, and the Academy will provide the corresponding resources. Along the way, the young woman kept introducing the situation of the Academy to Yang Tian. A few minutes later, the car stopped outside a residential area. This is the intermediate area. After completing the registration, you will officially become a student of the Superstar Academy. The young woman who sent Yang Tian said to Yang Tian, who got out of the car and drove away. At the entrance of the residential area, Yang Tian took out his green identity card and did a simple registration, and then received an intermediate student card. There's a number on the card, and the number was also the number of one of Yang Tian's houses in the academy. It was worth mentioning that in the academy, every student had their own independent house as their residence. In addition to personal residences, the academy also provided facilities such as gravity training rooms, special environment adaptation training rooms, and other public facilities. The students were very free in the academy. Usually, they could not stay in the academy to cultivate, as long as they passed the annual assessment. However, if they failed the assessment, they would be expelled from the academy. Yang Tian took his intermediate student card and walked toward his residence in the academy. For Yang Tian, such a relaxed learning environment was really too cool. Chapter 292. Yang Tian was able to recognize some of the simple numbers in the universal language. Yang Tian's intermediate student card was numbered 188, which was a very auspicious number. In the intermediate student area's rest area, Yang Tian looked at the numbers of the small buildings and finally found a three-story building numbered 188. The small buildings in the rest area were all of the same style, simple square, with a protruding balcony on each floor. On the rooftop of each small building, there was a circle of flowers and plants. Each small building covered an area of more than 100 square meters, and the distance between the small buildings was about 10 meters. Yang Tian came to the door of the 188 small building and swiped the intermediate student card on the identification device on the door. With a click, the door opened. After entering the door, Yang Tian looked at the floor one by one. The first floor was used for small activities. There was some fitness equipment that Yang Tian had never seen before. The second floor was a rest area with 4 rooms. They were the living room, bedroom, bathroom, and small bathroom. There were also 4 rooms on the third floor. One of the rooms had very advanced equipment, and there was also a bedroom. The other 2 rooms were probably used to store things. In Yang Tian's eyes, the furnishings in the room were not beautiful at all. However, this was Superstar Academy, a place used for cultivation. He estimated that no student would care about these things. Yang Tian's requirements were not high. As long as it was quiet, it would be fine. After looking at the layout of the third floor, Yang Tian returned to the second floor and lay on a wide bed-like chair in the living room. The curious little blue dragon left Yang Tian's shoulder and wandered around the room to visit his new home. Just now, he had a big fight with the woman named Soli and consumed a lot of energy. When lying on the soft chair, Yang Tian closed his eyes and rested. While Yang Tian was looking at his residence in the academy, 6 people gathered in the 187 building next door. They stood on a balcony and looked at the 188 building. That person just now must be the new student. I heard that he almost defeated the battle maniac. I wonder if it's true. The one who spoke was the shortest of the 6. He was slightly plump. A tall man shook his head and said, "In the end, it was Lord Shenwu who intervened. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see the result." As soon as this person's voice fell, a young man with slightly dark skin sneered and said, "This newcomer is very arrogant. You didn't even greet us when you came to our intermediate district." The chubby youth turned around and smiled. He has the strength to fight Battle Maniac to a draw and almost win. He's at least a planetary state domain lord. What tie? I don't think so. At this time, a handsome young man with long hair suddenly walked to the balcony and said with a smile, Sir Shunwu was the last to intervene. He was probably afraid that Soli would hurt him. This handsome young man had long golden hair and very white skin. He was like a Westerner on Earth. He didn't call Soli a battle maniac like the others. As soon as this person finished speaking, the 7 people on the balcony saw Soli in casual clothes with long wet blue hair come out of the door of the 186 building. She passed by the 187 building and came to the door of the 188 building. Soli, long time no see. As soon as Soli came to the door of the 188 building, the young man on the balcony of the second floor of the 187 building greeted her with a smile. Soli, who was wearing casual black clothes, had a faint, fierce aura around her. She looked beautiful and heroic. This handsome, long-haired young man couldn't hide the admiration in his eyes when he saw Soli. Soli turned around and glanced at this young man. She saw the scorching light in his eyes, but his expression was still very cold. Soli glanced at the young man and didn't respond. She turned around and pressed on the door. "Guest is here. Do you want to open the door?" At the same time, a beautiful female voice sounded in Yang Tian's living room. Yang Tian, who was closing his eyes and looking very comfortable, immediately opened his eyes when he heard the voice in the living room. A clear 3D image appeared in the living room. The screen showed Soli standing outside the door. Yang Tian didn't expect that the first person to visit him would be Soli, the woman who had just sparred with him. "Open the door." Yang Tian thought for a moment and said. As soon as Yang Tian's voice fell, the door on the first floor opened with a click. Soli saw the door open and directly walked in. With another click, the door was closed. Seeing this, the long-haired young man on the balcony of the 187 building narrowed his eyes, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. But very quickly, he regained his gentle smile, as if he didn't care at all about the cold shoulder he had received just now. The dark-skinned young man, standing behind him, smiled and said, "Soli is like this to everyone, but it seems that this is her first time visiting someone." With that, he pinched his chin and looked confused. The long-haired young man turned around and glanced at the dark-skinned young man who was pretending to be confused. Suddenly, he raised his hand and slapped the young man's face. Slap, the sound was very clear. The dark-skinned young man was slapped so hard that he almost spun around. "Genesis star you." The dark-skinned young man covered his face and looked at the long-haired young man. He clenched his teeth and then couldn't say anything, because he saw the coldness in the long-haired young man's eyes. Seeing the long-haired young man's eyes, the dark-skinned young man immediately smiled as if he was trying to please him. From the dark-skinned young man's words, they learned that this handsome young man with a head of golden hair was called Absolute Beginning Star. "In the future, don't use your little tricks on me. You're still too inexperienced to play with me." Genesis Star said lightly and directly left the 187 building. After Genesis Star left, the dark-skinned young man cast a look of hatred toward the 188 building. In his opinion, the one who humiliated him was the newcomer Yang Tian. The reason for this was probably jealousy, because Yang Tian hadn't officially become a student of the Superstar Academy, but he was able to tie with a student who had been famous for a long time, which showed his excellence. And outstanding people would always be envied by others. Where there were people, there would be conflicts. Even in the Superstar Academy, there was no lack of open and secret fights. Yang Tian closed his eyes and listened to the light footsteps coming from the stairs. Then, he suddenly opened his eyes. At this time, Soli had already appeared in his eyes. "Please have a seat." Yang Tian smiled and gestured for Soli to sit. Soli stood at the stairs and didn't move. She directly said to Yang Tian, "There's a training program. Would you like to come with me?" "Training? So fast." When Yang Tian heard Soli's words, he was stunned. He came to the Superstar Academy but hadn't even warmed up yet. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.